Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
You said none can go beyond the nascent soul cultivators, right? I asked. Yes. Then that means that some are already within those ranks. Wouldn't they just come and kill everyone here? I mean, none of us are at the nascent soul cultivation level. They're not allowed. No one of a higher realm can attack a person of a lower realm, so we're safe as long as we don't break through to the nascent soul cultivation level inside this cave. Right, then it seems to be slightly unfair. After all, you said that the quality of the same realm is higher with the humans. Right, thank you for the information, but I think I'll be fine on my own, I said, shrugging. Shen Bao, though the laws prohibit demons from attacking us, that isn't the same for the other cultivators. If you don't stay close to me, I can't protect you, Wu Di replied dryly. As much as I appreciate the offer, I've always relied on myself. Also, I have a companion who's pretty strong, I replied as I smiled. Your puppet cannot help you here, Wu Di shook his head. But I'm not talking about my puppet, I said as I grinned, facing the gate. The gate shuddered and swirled once again as the armored lion emerged from within it. It looked around at all the cultivators with apparent disdain as many of them pulled out their weapons in shaky hands. Some yelped in fright and the rest tightened their grips on their swords in grim determination. The lion looked around and once it spotted me, it came rushing in. Wu Di was shocked at the sudden appearance of the lion and immediately appeared in front of me. He swung open his fan and was readying up for a battle of death. The lion stopped in front of Wu Di and I smiled as I lightly placed my hand on Wu Di's shoulder. Relax, he's a friend, I said and walked in front of Wu Di. I stroked the lion's mane and said, this is a dangerous place, but your greed knows no danger, does it? I said, then threw a small pill into the lion's mouth. The lion happily ate it and then began wagging its tail and purring. Though his purrs were definitely skin-crawling growls, he was happy. Wu Di's shoulders relaxed a bit, but he still took a few steps away and asked, you tamed an armored lion? He asked unbelievingly. Not tamed, it's a partnership. Right, I'll be going now. Seems like you still need to meditate to manage the evil chi of this world. I won't delay you any longer, and perhaps we'll meet in the ranking area, I said, and then audaciously hopped over the lion's back. The kitten was annoyed at being used as a mount, but another pill was enough to satisfy his shamelessness. Take me to the woods, I said, and the lion bounded over, crossing hundreds of feet in single bounds at astonishing speeds. The woods that I thought were huge from afar were even more enormous the closer I've gotten, and the lion didn't seem the least bit disturbed by the evil chi nor the evil forest. I think I should give you a name, I said. And the lion looked over his shoulder expectantly. I have a good name for you. How about Arslan? You look like an Arslan. The lion cooed, definitely liking the name. Good then, Arslan. How fast can you go? I asked, and the lion, excited at being left to release the reins, shot forward with even faster speed than before, dodging the trees with feline dexterity, and moved through the forest with impressive familiarity. It seems that you came here often, the lion growled in accordance. I thought about this for a second, then immediately understood. This lion lived in the concave desert for a long while, so he must have seen the gate open at least once before, if not several times. He would have gone inside to explore and managed to find the exit, so as long as I'm with him I'll be able to find a way out after gaining all I could from this place. We continued moving through the woods aimlessly, and within the woods, I saw several creatures. Some were squirrels with 3 tails and jagged-looking fangs and a horn over their heads. I never liked squirrels, they look like evil incarnate, and in this domain, they seem to have embraced their true nature. Then came foxes, that bounded over the forest, and even boars with several tusks protruding from their jaws. The forest hosted a variety of creatures, but they were all on the demonic side. They all had horns and fangs, and none seemed to be of a herbivorous nature. Yet all these creatures decided against challenging the armored lion and gave us a leeway into the forest. All bar one little bugger. A bird, not bigger than one's palm, shirked at us. Its shrike caused the armored lion to stop in its track and almost jerk me over. I looked at the hovering bird and was surprised to have the Poison God's book speak up. Flesh diver. A 5th-tier demonic monster, though on the small side, and doesn't look any different than any regular bird. The flesh diver gains its name by its act of diving into a person's flesh, burrowing from the person's eyes and into their brains, where the flesh diver consumes the person's brain matter. It's an evil little creature, and its speed is what makes it deadly. It is best to leave a flesh diver alone when one can, as they are too fast to be predicted. Seems like danger comes in all sizes and shapes. Arslan, why don't we take another route? I guess this little bird is protecting its nest, I said as I noticed a small nest near the flesh diver, who hovered protectively and warned us continuously not to approach. The lion took a detour after giving the bird a resigned growl. It seems that even the armored lion didn't want to fight this little thing. The bird seemed relaxed and went back to his nest as soon as we moved away from our earlier path, and then I asked Arslan to slow down as we walked through the forest. We don't want to infringe upon a creature's territory that we can't afford to offend. We moved through the forest for a long time until I came upon a ruckus in the distance. I nudged Arslan in the direction of the sounds, and when we arrived I saw something rather breathtaking. There was a large pond where 3 women were bathing. I say woman because their breasts were plump, full, and bare as were the rest of their bodies. They had a single protruding horn over their heads, and all 3 of them seemed to be in their mid-20s if not early 30s. They laughed as they bathed, playing with water in a rather innocent manner. 2 of them had hair darker than the night, while one had golden hair that was cut short above her shoulders. And when the girl with the golden hair turned, she screamed her life out from fright, causing the 2 others to immediately turn and jump out of the water, not caring for their naked appearance, as they grabbed a sword each and pointed it directly at me. The girl with the golden hair dipped herself inside the water as the other 2 approached the lion uncaring. Seems like I came at the wrong time. I apologize, I said. The 2 girls looked at each other and immediately scampered away behind a nearby rock. What does one want? You're no demon, said one of the girls in black hair. I'm just venturing into the forest. I didn't mean to invade your privacy. I apologized and waited for the girls that hid behind a rock to wear their clothes, or as much as they could, to appear decent. You've committed a grave crime. You laid your eyes on the bare skin of the Tardigal, the Demon King. One of the raven-haired girls said. I didn't mean any offense by this, it was nothing but luck that I ended up coming here. Lies, this is a blessed and hidden place, no man can come here without it forcing them to move away. One of the 2 girls came out from behind the rock, her sword still pointing at me, and for some reason, though she had worn her drabs hastily, and her cleavage was fully on display, it looked far more enticing than when she was fully naked. I shook my head, removing thoughts that I have not thought about in years, and shrugged, saying, I don't lie, it's the truth. The girl, vexed, unable to come with a reasonable response, said, If you come here to take the princess, we'll fight you tooth and nail. Even if we were to die at the hands of your armored lion, we'll not let you take her highness without a fight. Discard any thoughts of an easy-picking kidnapper, the woman accused. I shook my head and said, You're fast jumping to conclusions. I don't even know this king of yours, nor this princess. Anyway, where's the road to the Demon-kin city? I asked. Sister, replied the second girl with the raven hair. I believe he speaks true, and if he wanted us dead, he would have killed us without revealing himself and taken the princess. Why do you say so? He may have tamed a purple lion, but if we work together we can take his life before he even has time to order his lion to attack. The first girl said. But did you see where he emerged from? It's the territory of the flesh-rending shirker. No man lives crossing that path. Not even his armored lion should survive an encounter with that little devil. Especially since it's in its maternity period. This man is either lucky enough to not encounter the shirker or strong enough to dissuade it from attacking. Lucky or strong, we shouldn't wish to do battle with either. Seems your sister is rather sensible. I'm Shen Bao, a cultivator. I'm Nandra, replied the sensible girl. The other spoke after her, I'm Sandra, royal guard to Her Highness Titragul. Seems that their names are different from cultivators. Perhaps it's a demonic name. Pleased to meet you. I still seek the passage to the city of the Demon Kin. I wish to know more about the Lord ranking if possible. Then you'll have to turn around first. We need to have the princess dressed, otherwise, you don't wish to add another crime to your first. Sandra spoke in a cold tone. I guess you're right then. I'll be behind that tree. Call me when you're done, I said, ogling a bit too far into Sandra's rack. She gave me a cold look of disgust immediately afterward. And I offered an apologetic look. I immediately shook my head. What the hell was going on here? My libido's been dormant for decades, why is it working itself up now? Just as I relaxed a bit behind a rock, I was called back. Turning, I saw the girls standing fully dressed and behind them a bit more than 20 soldiers. Sandra pointed at me in a wicked grin. That's the men who ogled. Well, shit. The soldiers were all wearing neatly crafted armors of steel and chains, with helmets that covered their faces and left small holes for their horns to protrude. The reddish skin of the demon king gleamed off the sky's glow. And it gave a demonic, threatening air to them. The soldiers funneled in front of the three women, their spears and swords in arms, and pointed at me as they approached. Arslan growled and the soldiers immediately stopped their aggressiveness. You'll have to surrender yourself for punishment, one of the guards said. Punishment? For what? For ogling at the princes. One of the guards said hesitantly. Arslan was a pretty big distraction, especially when it growled. I mean, if she is a princess, can't she afford a bathtub and bath within her own home? Palace or whatever her royal behind can afford? Are you so destitute that you can't take a bath in your own home? I replied. S. To be honest, I was feeling a little bit peevish. I didn't like this scenario. I'm being blamed because they decided it was a good place to take a naked dip. I'm not going to stand for that. It's not my fault. The soldiers looked around and Sandra, the colder of the two girls, pointed her finger at me and called, You dare call us destitute? Am I wrong? Can't you afford a bathtub? I spoke. Foolish men, this pool is beneficial for the princess's skin and can aid her retaining her youth, Sandra said. I shrugged. You could have had some soldiers fill your bath with water from this pool. You're just dirtying good drinkable water with you all bathing in it. I replied, further infuriating them. One of the guards decided it was a good time to jump and try to take my head. His luge was immediate as he burst from the ground, his sword aimed at my face. I tightened my legs around Arslan. I didn't need him to act, at least not now. I slightly rotated myself to the side, and the man's sword dove past my ear without touching me. At the same time, I grabbed the guard's hand, twisted, and the man's right arm was dislocated from its socket before he even touched the ground. Once he was on the floor, Arslan decided the man's chest could be a good comfortable spot for him to place his heavy armored paw on. Seems that we're at an impasse. Say, I've been nothing but polite, and still I was rewarded with rude brutish attitude. I expect an explanation, I said with a venomous tone. The sudden change and the disparity of strength that I just showed to these soldiers was a sobering and waking call for them. They had no idea what they were facing, and seeing their friend being dispatched so suddenly and so rapidly gave them a grim prospect on their own future. Honorable cultivator, you must be here for the lord-ranking tournament, one of the soldiers said. Perhaps, I replied. The path is to the north, less than a few leagues from here. You'll make it on the back of your fearsome mount in less than an incense time. The soldier replied. That's not enough to pardon your rudeness, not nearly enough. Here, said Nandra, the more sensible of the girls with the black hair. An ornament flew up in front of me. It was a hairpin, a beautiful jade hairpin with dozens of inscriptions on it, and a few of them were inscriptions I've never seen before. That's a defensive treasure. It can block an attack from a nascent soul-level cultivator, Nandra said. Her sister looked at her with concern. Nandra, that's a precious treasure. Not worth our lives. Nandra replied. These inscriptions, they are different, I said, fully ignoring their conversation. Yes, they may seem different. They're from this land. We have proficient inscribers in our demon land. Do you have an inscription manual? Something regarding the demonic language? I asked. Yes, but it's only preliminary, nothing too advanced. This is common and you can find it almost anywhere on the demon lands. She said and threw me a manual she pulled from a ring on her fingers. I took the manual and smiled. This is reward enough, you're all excused, and next time, try not to be rude to strangers. They might not all be as nice as I am, especially since more than a couple of hundred cultivators have arrived with me to this world. Arslan, let's go north, I said, and the lion bounded with a single jump over the whole of the contingents of the soldiers. I could feel the sighs of relief. It was only natural. If they decided to fight, Arslan alone can make quick work of them, and they'd be doomed to their death without being able to retaliate or escape. I also gave them a piece of advice, to just back off from this place. Though I'm definitely strong, I'm not the strongest of the group of cultivators, at least in terms of strength and cultivation level. There are some cultivators who are a step away from the nascent soul level, and I'm still struggling with foundation establishment cultivation level. I rode on Arslan's back, headed a bit away from the direction the soldiers had told me where the demon city would be at. I didn't have any need to be at the tourney grounds, at least not yet. I needed to venture through this wilderness and see if I could find anything of interest. Due to the demonic chi of this demon land, not many spiritual plants could grow here, and the rare few that would have an evil chi within them, and they'll only be useful for normal cultivators when used to create demonic pills, such as temporary power-up pills. The magic word here is normal cultivator, as a different breed of cultivators that can use the evil chi within these herbs to create a rather new and different type of poison pills. But the problem is finding these herbs. I searched high and low, and could only find a few random herbs that had spiritual chi within them throughout the forest. All thanks to the Poison God's book, it interfered with my vision and highlighted the spiritual herbs in the vicinity. The herbs I found weren't of great quality or rarity, they were normal herbs, some even were spiritual weed that had been enhanced with evil chi, and no rare demonic spiritual herbs ever presented themselves to me. After almost a day of traveling around, I decided against looking any further. If there are any herbs I'm chanced to stumble upon, I would have done so with the aid of the book, but now seeing nothing in sight, I decided it would be best if I try my luck inside the demon city. Perhaps there could be a vendor that could sell me herbs. Arslan raced back to the city and I found myself at its doors by night time. Night came creeping like a shadow creeping upon the land. There were no stars, no moon, and no majestic sense of space. There was nothing but a muffled and dim red hue that covered the skies. I arrived at the city gate that was lit by torches and demon soldiers that guarded the entrance. The door was locked. "Who goes there?" one of the demons at the gate shouted. I lit one of my fingers to show my face. "I'm here for the tourney," I said. "You're late, and it's late. You'll only be allowed entry once it's morning." I sighed, then patted Arslan's head. "My pet here doesn't like to sleep under the stars. He gets grouchy, and when he is grouchy, he gets hungry." "I think you wouldn't want him hungry," I said. "Is that a threat?" the man said. "You can take it however you wish, Arslan. Remember that man. He is the one who denied you entry in a warm bed," I said and turned to leave. The men saw the growling and snarling lion and shuddered. "Hold. I can make an exception, just for you. Raygun, open the gate." "But, Torek, the rule is to close it at night time." "To hell with the rule. That's an armored lion. If it wants it can bring down the gate with a sneeze. Just open it. If someone comes asking, you can put the blame on me." "Your funeral, Torek," the men said, and the gate swung open. "Thank you for being comprehensive," I replied and threw a spirit-strengthening pill at the men. The horned man caught it in his hand, took a sniff, and his eyes flared with excitement. "Thank you, benevolent one," he replied in a bow. I walked into the city with Arslan in tow, and no one dared stop us, talk to us, or even greet us. Anyone with a single brain cell knew well enough that it would be unwise to even stand in the same 100 miles as would a purple armored lion, not to mention the same street. And I was planning on using Arslan to wicked ends. Seeing a couple of men who had their wares displayed on the ground and they sat waiting for people to come and procure their goods, I walked with purpose towards them, while Arslan was a couple of paces behind me. Once I was in front of the merchant, the man struggled to keep his composure. He looked at me with shuddering fright and waited impatiently for me to browse through his wares. Finding nothing of value, I shrugged and left him. He slumped down, his hand over his chest, heaving strong breaths as if he had just won his life and death and life duel. The same scene repeated itself a few times over, but most of the vendors at night time had nothing worth selling, as most of their wares of value would have undoubtedly be sold in the morning. Soon I noticed that the already scarce and rare few vendors decided that their hearts would beat longer and stronger if they didn't suffer the same fate as their rivals, and hefted their wares and left the area. All but one man, a man that felt rather conspicuously inconspicuous. Which said a lot. The man's whole demeanor was like a normal merchant. He wore casual drabs, nothing too horrid but nothing too fancy. His robes were black, and he had a hood that shaded half of his face, only showing a small beard that had some rare few white strands growing in it. The man didn't seem the least bit fazed by Arslan and didn't even deem me worth lifting his chin up to look in my eyes. He neither invited me to look at what he had to sell nor did he ask me to leave after I took a long while inspecting his wares. His stuff was rather interesting. A few treasures, one might call them. A bell that looked to be stolen from the ages. It was an old brass bell that had a sonorous jingle to it and a red strand that carried it. Its weight was far heavier than it should, and it didn't seem to have any inscriptions or anything special about it. Yet I felt it in me that this small bell was special, but at the same time, something tugged at my mind. This bell, it was not for me. I just felt it. It's like looking at a beautiful woman on the street, so beautiful in fact that you just shrug and keep moving. It's like the both of you live on two different realms. It's not for a fact that you can't woo her, but she is just beautiful, something that you can enjoy looking at, but not own. I kept looking at other things, then saw a feather and a quill, and for some reason, this object called to me. I went to pick it up and the man grabbed my hand, squeezing tightly. Suddenly, I felt that my life was in his hands and he could end me with a thought. It only lasted for a second before the feeling subsided and he said, "Apologies for startling you, this quill is yours, free of charge." The man said. "S." I frowned but wasn't going to refuse a free gift. The moment I grabbed the quill and inspected it, I turned to ask the man about its origin, only to find nothing in front of me. What the hell? I kept looking around, suspiciously. That man was far stronger than anything I've ever experienced. And I could even dare say, when he grabbed my hand, I felt more threatened than when I gazed upon the primordial dragon serpent. Perhaps I'm wrong, or perhaps the snake was just too far to cause me immediate worry, but the man in black. He frightened me to no end. It was the same as seeing oneself under the guillotine, with no hope to ever survive. But then he had released my hand and offered me this strange item. I took a look at the quill and noticed that it had some ink within it. I tried to soak the feather within the quill, but the liquid was so damn heavy I almost broke my wrist trying to move the ink. What the hell? I muttered. I could clearly move the liquid inside the quill as if it was normal ink, but the moment the feather touches the ink it becomes viscous and hella heavy. Not even the Poison God's book gave me any description of this quill and feather. I sighed and tried to place them inside the Poison God's book, but the book adamantly refused to take in the quill and feather. However, when I used a regular pouch, the pouch took in the quill as if it was nothing but a normal item. This is a rather peculiar item. I should try and use it while inscribing, I thought, and then continued touring the city. There were not many merchants selling their items at night, and I decided it would be best to find an inn where I can rest for the night, meditate until it's a morning where the tourney would begin. I found the only open restaurant in the city. It was the only place that had a lot of noise coming from it and decided it was a good place to spend the night. I haven't had a drink in a while. Arslan, you'd probably not even fit through the door and we wouldn't want to be so rude as to break the inn's doors. You can go around and explore the vicinity if you like, but try not to eat anyone. Unless they deserve eating, I said, and the lion's ears flopped to the side. I felt sad for having to ask Arslan to go away, but I can't take him with me everywhere, he's just too big. The lion turned and cooed sadly and then moved through the city streets. I'm more than certain a lot of people will have a very frightening night. But Arslan won't eat anyone, I think, probably. I hope. I shook my head and walked into the restaurant. It was quite grand and had dozens of large tables that hosted a good deal of cultivators and demons alike. Some were boisterous, drinking and celebrating, some were quiet and calm, and among them was Wu Di, who looked rather serene in the company of his sect disciples, sharing laughs and jokes as they enjoyed their meal. Shen Bao. Wu Di called loud as he raised a mug of his in a toast. "We've missed you on today's tourney. How fares your journey?" asked Wu Di. "Good. Hey, we heard some rumors about a man with a purple lion got to see the Demon King's daughter stark naked," one of Wu Di's friends said in a sly smile. "I say there aren't many cultivators that can tame a purple lion, and our friend Shen Bao is the only one with balls big enough to tame on and freely ogle at a naked princess," the man said. He was a young man with short stature, and had a rat-like face. He looked humorous, and of good spirit, until he spoke the following words, "To Shen Bao's balls of steel," he said in a toast, and the rest of the group dropped out laughing like mad. I grinned. Seems like these kids are bad, but the good kind of bad. "To my balls then, give me a mug, I could use a good drink," I replied and sat next to them. Some of the demon-kin had an ugly expression on their faces, especially after hearing this young man's toast, but they still knew not to cross any of the cultivators. "How was the princess?" the young man asked. "Xiao Lang, you're being rude," Wu Di said, but his tone wasn't aligned with his voice. He too was a young man, and probably also wanted to know. "Well, like any girl, a pretty face, nice rack, and wide hips." "Man, you have no imagination. Seems like you've never even touched a girl for you to speak of a woman's body with such crudeness." Xiao Lang looked rather displeased by lack of description, but I only smiled at him. "Well, I actually have 2 sons," I replied. Oh, now that's interesting, where are they? Wu Di asked. In a remote village in the country of Zhou, I replied melancholically. To Shen Bao's sons. Wu Di called and the group of cultivators drank another toast. One of the girls of the group asked, Grandpa Bao, she said. And I smiled at that word, Grandpa, ha. Yes dear, I replied. How old are your sons, she asked. The rest of the men began hooting, seems like Yusahan wants to be Shen Bao's daughter-in-law. The rat-faced Xiao Lang commented, to which the girl's face turned a beet red. I smiled and replied, they're both married, and they're mortals. They're not worthy of you. I said. Bullshit, I say anyone with Shen Bao's genes will be a dragon among men, don't sell yourself short. Wu Di replied boisterously. I smiled wryly, thinking back about my sons, and then sighed as I said, perhaps you're wrong. My sons, well. It's been a while since I've last thought about them, they should be doing fine on their own. The atmosphere began to turn heavy, especially when Xiao Lang said, why, I think your sons would be proud to have their father as a great cultivator such as you, Shen Bao. Not really. The last time I saw them, I was still a mortal just like them, and because of being a mortal, greed and jealousy took the better of their judgment. We parted on sad terms. I said, sighing. Suddenly one of the people from a nearby table came towards us and said, I remember a Shen Bao from my country, the name isn't strange, I come from a village next to Lucid Spring, and the city lord of that village was also called Shen Bao and had 2 sons, could it be you, the cultivator asked. I was surprised that someone knew of my old city, but I didn't wish to reply. It could be just a coincidence in the name. Ah, then, good, because the whole city was razed to the ground. I shuddered and stood up, grabbed the cultivator by the robes, and said, what? The man was slightly frightened, but he coughed and said, as I said, Lucid Springs was razed to the ground. It seems that a cultivator from one of the sects was promised a visit from the city lord of Lucid Springs to craft for him an elixir to repair his broken meridians. The cultivator went through a lot of trouble to make such an elixir, and when he made it, he waited long for the men to come and pay his due, but he never came, so the cultivator went to Lucid Spring and razed it to the ground in vengeance for his wasted time. I shuddered and let go of them and then said, do you know this cultivator's name, his sect, or anything? I'll reward you handsomely. I said. The man shook his head. I only heard rumors, perhaps they're just lies, but the name of the cultivator was never mentioned. What about the city lord's sons, have they also died? I asked the question, fearing for the worst and hoping that my fears would be unfounded. No one survived the cultivator's wrath, as I was told, but you can never tell. Perhaps the city lord's sons were not even in that city, as I heard they usually lived in other cities away from Lucid Spring. Right, I said and calmed down a bit, they could still be alive. I shuddered as I thought of the faith of my sons. Lu Bao and Xiao Bao. They were evil, unfilial, and outright threw me to my doom, but they were still my sons, my family. My blood. Even if they had pierced my heart with a searing dagger, I'd still find a reason to forgive them. Blood cannot be so easily discarded and so easily ignored. I shuddered and shook, my body was irritated and my mind was in shambles, thinking about how my own family could have been annihilated and destroyed by some random cultivator. It was partially my fault. I should have treated my own sons better so that they wouldn't have turned as they did. My fault that my son's fate is unknown. My chi became unstable and rotated on its own. Madness and rage swirled along with my chi as I thought about all the torments I should visit upon the bastard who dared touch my family. And there and then, my chi on its own assaulted my bottleneck. I was about to break through. I could barely speak a few words before the chi's rotation turned graver. Everyone leave. I'm about to break through. I shouted, and I couldn't even add more to express the dangers of a breakthrough while so close to so many other cultivators. Wu Di, however, had his eyes bulging and called, everyone leave the restaurant. Wu Di said and jumped from where he sat, leaving the area as fast as he could. A heavy sense of danger suddenly befell everyone within the room, as they noticed everyone fleeing the ground. Suddenly, 3 demons came rushing toward the restaurant while everyone was leaving. They stood around me, creating a triangle between them, and raised their hands, making a shimmering barrier come to life. Poison chi rotated ravenously within me and began wreaking havoc through my body. Pustules burst and seeped their content on the ground, searing it and burning bits and pieces of the wood, making the floor a gaseous substance began to emit from the wood. The body and bone-grinding poison were nefariously ravaging through my body, enhancing it to be more attuned with poison and in the process, expelling the pus and grim from my body. Further turning my body from that of a human to that of a poison body. Pain, intolerable and unquenchable pain wrecked me from head to toe. As my gray hair turned darker, and my skin regained its firmness, the pustules and tumors grew visibly smaller and I even began seeing areas with full healthy but still pale skin on my body. The hole in my right eye burned but it never healed, it was forever missing, but in the other eye I could feel it being altered, assaulted by the green aura of poison. As for my bones, they became sturdier and stronger while my muscle, flesh and tendons hardened for a moment before they became in better shape. If I were to compare my body from before this very moment, when I was still at the foundation establishment, I was like a 60-year-old man, with barely enough longevity. But now I'm feeling more like a person in his late 40s if not early 50s. A good deal of strength had returned to me, and I could feel the last meridian that I needed finally emerging within the center of my core right above my dantian. The 108th meridian. Yet the moment the meridian was created, the dantian within me shuddered and began to amass the poison chi within it, aided by the meridians in my body to create an egg-like object that I could feel but not touch right within my dantian. The golden object rotated, and with its rotation, it gathered a huge cloud of poison chi around it, then condensed it, pressing it against itself. The cloud was as big as the world, and the core was forcing this cloud to concentrate against itself. The cloud tightened around itself and it began to rain, filling my dantian with a green substance that rained like there was no tomorrow. The floating core continued rotating within my dantian, and further condensing the cloud until it was literally squeezed dry and turned to water. I could see within my dantian an enormous green sea that was serene and calm but with a vast depth, and above it was the core, shaped like an egg but large enough that it acted like a moon to this vast sea. Finally, I opened my eyes to see 3 cultivators straining to keep the barrier around me, but before I could speak, I felt something coming up of my throat. And I opened my mouth, where I released a black gas that shot out from within me like all the evils of hell were being released at once. The black gas shot upwards where the 3 demon cultivators strained to keep the gas within the barrier. Once the last bit was out, the 3 of them all did the same motion with their hands and the barrier collapsed around the gas and then floated upwards into the vast skies. I was feeling disoriented for a bit, and right before I could even say my thanks to the cultivators, one of them shouted, "You! Leave the city at once," he called. "Huh, why?" I asked. "Though congratulations are due to having broken through to core formation, you have undoubtedly brought the wrath of the jealous heavens with your perfect meridians. Your heavenly tribulation is gathering above us right now. If you suffer it inside the city, nothing will be left. Leave now," the demon said. "Shit," I cursed. "Heavenly tribulation, what the heck? Isn't that some advanced shit that should only happen in higher realms?" I felt the rumble of thunder clouds above me and decided that it would be best to leave this place now. "Thanks for everything." "Good luck," the man said. I pulled my flying sword and jumped on it, then flew away. Leaving everyone looked shocked. I mean, I know it was badass the breakthrough and all, even if the reason was rage at my son's fate, but they shouldn't be all that shocked, right? Unless heavenly tribulation is really rare. But as I took a second glance at the people gawking at me, I noticed that all of them were actually looking not at me but my sword. Ah, shit, now that I think about it, shouldn't this whole place have a law that denies cultivators the usage of flying treasures? Well, no time to think about this right now. As a matter of fact, red clouds are gathering right above the city, and if I don't leave fast enough there will be no city left. The heavens rumbled as the clouds gathered above me, wrathful at my perfect breakthrough and the creation of a core powerful enough to shake the world and the vision of the cultivators. Though with how advanced the world of cultivation is, many were able to break through with perfect meridians, and they all prepared adequate treasures to fight against the wrath of the heavens. And I had accidentally triggered the heavenly tribulations without ready treasures. Man imposes, and heaven disposes. But I'm not going to lay down and wait for the wrath of heavens to befall me without fighting back. The rumbling clouds thickened and they superimposed over the red skies. You can only see red all over the plains as I flew away as far as I could from the city. Yet, many other cultivators ran after me. They didn't mean me any harm, nor would they even dare to, as the jealous heavens punished those who defied her with ruthless impunity. But if one were to interfere in the heavens' own punishment, they'll receive their own version of punishment far crueler and far deadlier than the breaking through cultivator. They all wanted to see how the heavens will call down its punishment. And I wasn't too worried about them. Once I judged that I had moved a distance far enough, and was in an area that had no one present to interfere. I sat down in the lotus position and waited. The clouds rumbled and shuddered, shook and seethed with unhinged fury. It was blasphemous, audacious, and outright arrogant for a man to dare and wrest perfection from the hands of heaven. The jealous heavens began to coerce its agent, the red clouds into baleful turmoil, shaking and writhing as the belly of the storm gave one loud thundering boom before a lightning bolt, redder than blood, shot down at me. X shot out from the poison god's book. It jumped up and attempted to block the lightning bolt, but the bolt, as if guided by the utter and complete disdain of the puppet, dodged X and came at me. I held my right hand upwards and literally grabbed the tip of the lightning bolt. A fraction of a second, I felt the writhing and squirming might of heaven within the grasp of my hand, but after that fraction of a second, the muscles on my hand shook, tightened, then flesh and veins burst in a shower of blood. The might of that heavenly bolt was too much for my hand to sustain, and I was left with bleeding and heavily damaged arm. Shaking, I had my right arm next to me. It was scorched, blackened from the damage of the heavenly tribulation lighting, but I grinned, because in that damage, I felt life. It was the same as would a field grow back to life after it is burnt to a crisp. There was destruction in that lightning, but at the same time, it held the secrets of the universe, life, creation within destruction, and heavens wielded both with complete mastery that it would bog the mind of one who dared try and understand the laws within this lightning. I immediately threw a poison pill on my mouth and used the chi within it to rapidly repair the damage caused by the lightning. I smiled as I waited for the second lightning strike. The heavens, seemingly unimpressed by my attitude, sent another bolt at me. This one was thicker than the first, and I felt it was judging my will to live. And I had more will to live than any man. I cherished my life and wasn't going to lay down and be smote to nothingness without a fight. I wielded creeping demise and pointed it upwards. Come. I called, and the lighting surged at me with a vicious vengeance as it boomed through the skies, breaking the sound barrier as it came for my skin, flesh, veins, and soul. Destruction entailed within its obvious disdain of those who seek perfection. Ah, such sight! Who wouldn't want to be me right now, facing the wrath of the jealous heavens with a grin so wide that it reaches my ears? I used the tiger stinger skill, a challenge to heaven's assault, as I faced against the bolt with my sword and decided to break through it before it bore through me. I flashed forward, both slashing and thirsting my sword, hand extended and my legs taut from the jump. I came in a challenge against heaven's will, and my sword and the lightning clashed at one point. A loud explosive sound echoed in the vicinity, enough that the many cultivators that have just arrived were forced back from the shockwave of my affront to heaven's doom. But in this battle, I came up short, and the lightning bolt was far more powerful than what power I could muster in my challenge. I was struck down against the ground, where my whole body was ravaged by tendrils of red lightning. Yet, the lightning didn't burn my body this time. It had to struggle against my robe, the robe made from hundreds of thousands of small inscriptions that hardened it and made it sturdier. I stood up from the ground I was buried under, toppling rubble and stones from above me as I grinned. My whole body was seared, and my face was covered in soot, dust, and grim, yet I smiled focused as the third lightning bolt gathered to come down upon me. I gathered my chi within me and roared in challenge. Heaven wanted me dead, and I would never bow down to death without a fight. Chi surged within my body, dreadfully delighted at my challenge. My own chi was a challenge against heavenly will. My own chi, my poison chi, was never a part of the heavenly law. It was its own law. It didn't follow the rules of the cultivator's spiritual chi meridians. And therefore the heavenly chi decided that it didn't want a challenger to its primordial authority. Heavenly chi, spiritual chi, the very world's natural energy, disdained to see another variant of itself guiding another cultivator to the top, and it didn't wish for it to be rivaled, so it came at me, with not one, not two, but 3 lightning bolts as big as my thighs as they shot at me. He's dead, one of the cultivators spoke, and I was amazed at how I could still hear him though he was so far. Another shook his head, and even that motion I was able to perceive without having my eyes on him. Was this divine sense? I grinned. I have yet unlocked another ability. Right, let's focus up. If these 3 bolts struck me, I'll be doomed, and there is no way for me to survive. That is if I were to take them head on. Then inspiration dawned on me, as I remembered a single step I had done within the Laughing Slaughterer's pagoda. The step I took against his stairs, the step that cracked those sturdy steps that months of me using my skills couldn't even scar. That step came to me, and I felt that it was what I needed to use. With the same fugue and insightful sensation I had that day, I raised my leg and struck at the ground, causing a huge boulder to raise from under me and fly up in the air. In one breath, I jumped after the boulder, grabbing my brush from my pouch, and then I wrote S. My hand splattered golden ink on the back of the massive boulder, with exaggerated moves as the writing had imprinted itself in masterful calligraphy. Indomitable. The words shone brightly in gold then, in a sickly bright green, as the lighting bolts shot at the boulder and found a resistance that they didn't expect to be there. The bolts were stopped and they crashed against the indomitable boulder. Cracks appeared on it, but it resisted. Parts of it were broken off, but the boulder still resisted. The first bolt exploded, shaking the hovering boulder, but it couldn't move it much. The second bolt shattered and it also failed to pierce through. Finally, the final bolt inflated itself with the remains of the other two bolts and came down on the indomitable boulder with so much force that it turned it to dust as it passed through it. Yet the boulder did its job, weakening the bolts as much as possible before it came in contact with me. The bolt was powerful still, but not enough to threaten my life. I was struck down once again, against the ground. My bones cracked, my chest heaved, and my face was burnt halfway through. Yet I stood once again, gazing up against the turmoiled skies. There were now 4 more bolts, far bigger and far mightier than before. But I wasn't giving up. The thrill to battle heavens themselves sent new waves of energy coursing through me. My adrenaline pumped and my lips stretched into a devilish grin. Bring it on. The clouds had heavily dissipated. This was heaven's final assault. Afterwards, the heavens will have finished its judgment and I would be free to live until I once again break through to the nascent realm. The end goal is near, but I'm near exhaustion. X is useless, my robe is damaged, my chi is depleted, yet I smiled. This was enjoyable. This challenge was invigorating and I felt alive fighting against this impossibility. Man imposes but heaven disposes, yet I would not take heaven's disposal with meekness. I'll rise above and never bend my back to it. I looked up and knew that using the same trick again would not work. The hasty inscription on the boulder was good, but there were no other massive boulders near me, not that I could feel with my divine sense. Nor do I think that heavens will fall to the same trick again. I needed to battle the last bolts with my own power, power that was fading rapidly. Yet, I won't back off. I pulled a handful of poison pills from my pocket and took them all at once. This would undoubtedly kill me on any other day, but I needed a lot of energy to do what I'm about to do, and my natural reserves were far too exhausted to rely on. I immediately digested the pills and power beyond what I could imagine surged through me. My body, though it was being threatened to collapse from the sheer amount of poison chi, was ecstatic. Looming doom and fear were outright discarded as my mind raced to find ways out of this mess, and the only solution it found for me was in an image of the poison god's own challenge against might far greater than him. I raised both my hands in perfect remembrance of the poison god's own poison tiger claw. His power was strong enough to break a planet, and I for a small second felt the poison god's avatar, his own soul, possessing me. For a fraction of a second, I was able to see all the minute mistakes that I have made in my own attempt to replicate the poison tiger claw, and I adjusted. The chi needed to course through me, the rotation of my newly birthed core, and my bearing, even my own emotion, needed to be as proud, ferocious, and as courageous as that of a tiger. Even in the face of heavenly tribulation, I needed to brave through it, fight against it, not resist, not struggle, but to actually believe that I will triumph. And with that I swung down both my hands in a clawing motion, causing the world to heave in fright as if the real poison god has appeared once again. The earth trembled, the grass withered, and the skies churned as 6 claws of green energy far bigger than the lighting from heaven were summoned. My body gave the poison chi for the skill, all of it but a fraction to keep me alive, and this power struck down against heaven's lightning. The two energies collided, and in their collision, the world threatened to crack. The earth shook and parted from under me, and the skies shuddered and its cloud dispersed. All that was left were the battling forces of heavenly energy and my green deadly poisonous claws. Then came the end. As both energies failed to bore through each other and destroy each other, they then aimed at themselves, blowing up to cause the other destruction. And in that self-implosion, the world shook as I was thrown off where I stood from the mere shockwave, tumbling and spinning like a rag doll on the ground, unable to break my fall as I continued to rapidly crash against dirt, stone, and small bushes, where my rapid deadly tumble was stopped by a massive boulder that cracked against me as I cracked against it. I could feel my whole body suffering from pain and so many internal injuries that I could barely keep my eye open. My skull was definitely fractured, not to mention several ribs, my arm, and heavy damage to my liver, and a broken leg. Still, I grinned. I survived. As I glanced up, with a blurry eye, I could see the seething skies dissipating and energy from the world began to surge. Whenever the heavenly tribulation clouds come, death, doom, and destruction are left in its wake. Heaven is cruel, yet merciful. As an apology to the destruction heaven always creates, it blesses those who suffer its wrath and survive. And I could feel it. The residual lightning energy in the atmosphere began to mend my wounds. Though I was not attuned to the heavenly energy, though I couldn't cultivate it, my body, for some reason, was still nourished by it. A dislocated shoulder popped back, the broken leg suddenly mended itself back, and my wounded flesh healed visibly. No, even the burn on my face nor the burnt hair remained, as it was replaced with healthy skin, far healthier than even when I broke through to core formation. Soon, Woody came rushing in after me. "You crazy bastard. Are you okay?" he asked. Worry apparent on his face. "More or less, but I'm feeling hella sore." "Wait, I think I'm gonna throw up," I said and pushed Woody to the side. I regurgitated all the impurities from the mass of pills I just consumed, and I was definitely not feeling well. Thanks to heaven's compassion, my body was healed and even the damage from the pills I ate was lessened, but it was still there. I'll need to heal myself. A few pills and probably a couple of days of rest would bring me back to full health. "How is Grandpa Shen Bao?" a feminine voice asked. It was Yuzahan, the girl that accompanied Xiao Lang and Wu Di. "He's doing fine, but I don't think Grandpa Shen Bao is applicable anymore," rat-faced Xiao Lang said with a sly grin. "Oh, my," Yuzahan's face flushed a bit as she looked at me. "What's going on?" I asked, frowning. Yuzahan immediately pulled up a mirror and handed it to me. I took it and glanced at my face. Apparently, all the tumors on my face had disappeared, and instead of the wizened old man who had years stolen from him by time, there was a middle-aged man with a stout-looking face. The man even had a goatee and was handsome. If not for the gaping hole in that man's face, I would have mistaken him for nobility with a slightly pale face due to some sickness. That very paleness, though, gave the man a sense of handsome evilness to his disposition. "The hell?" I asked, and the man in the mirror also mimicked my face. "That's me." Apparently, Grandpa Shen Bao became handsome Uncle Shen Bao, Yuzhan said. Xiao Lang grinned as he said, "Seems that Yuzahan is no longer interested in the lion's cubs and wants the lion all for herself." The girl flushed once more and playfully smacked Xiao Lang on the head. To which everyone began laughing. And I was left with a smile on my face. I continued looking in the mirror and grinned. Bar from the gaping hole for an eye, I actually looked more human than before. I tried to stand up. Tried was the magic word, because everything hurt. I could even feel the growth of new muscle tissue and the soreness that followed it. I was unable to stand up unaided, and Wu Di came to my aid. He propped his shoulder under mine and helped me walk. "Let me take you back to the inn. You need rest, Shen Bao," Wu Di said as he glanced around. He had a wary look on his face, as if afraid of someone attacking us. "Why the long face?" I asked. "You look worried," I said as I looked at the rest of Wu Di's companions. "You all look worried." I added. "Yes, now that you're a core formation realm cultivator, the demonkins are allowed to attack you on sight. You hereby entered the competition for the Lord's ranking." "Oh, I believed it would be an arena-like tournament or something like that," I said. "The more civil of the demonkin and the ones with the strength to carry their own weight around rather face us on the arena. But the weaker, most insidious and sinister ones usually take chances when cultivators are alone, meditating or weakened to assault them," Wu Di said. Xian Lang also spoke. "You present the best target, weak, wounded, and just barely entered core creation realm," Xiang Lang said. "It would be best if we take you to the inn and stay with you until you're healed up." I shook my head. "I can't do that. I'll be imposing on your time. Master had said to guard you and protect you at all costs. This Lord's ranking is good, but I doubt it's worth going against my master nor protecting a good friend," Wu Di said. I smiled at the men and said, "I'll make sure to repay this favor, but I really don't need any help." Before Wu Di could interject, a group of demons came at us. They were 5, led by a short-statured demon that had so many daggers on his person that one would mistake him for a dagger rack. "Leave that man and go," said the short-statured demon. The rest of the demonkins around him had readied their weapons. Wu Di frowned. "That's Chan Gui. He had already killed a few of our friends and few cultivators. He usually go after the weaker cultivators." "Xiang Lang, Yuzahan, ready up," Wu Di said. "Hold up," I said. "You mean you already fought him?" I asked. News spread fast among cultivators. "You came very late today. We already faced against a lot of demons just to get inside the city. We were fighting the whole day and barely got some time to rest," Wu Di said. So, you were actually resting when you were in the inn from all the battles, I said as I removed my arm from over Woody's shoulder. I'm not so helpless to be safeguarded like a sheltered princess, I said. Thank you for the help, but I won't be dragging you in my troubles. After all, it was because of me that you all had to leave the inn. It won't sit well with me to see others suffer for my own faults. I added, then drew my sword. Shen Bao, you've yet to stabilize your cultivation, you just broke through, not to mention you're heavily damaged, you need to heal first, let us help. That old man has clearly lost his head, he thinks he can fight us with those wounds, one of the men accompanying Chan Gui said in a derisive tone as he licked his sword. Man, that's just unsanitary. I won't be fighting, nor will you. I said to Wu Di, Arslan, you can come out. I said, then a roar that shook the earth echoed from behind the group of assailants. Turning, they saw the armored lion standing tall behind them, while they had no idea how it had managed to approach so close without them noticing. Remember when I told you don't eat anyone, I said to Arslan. Well, you can forget that. Feast to your heart's content, I hope they don't taste bad though. And so the lion was let loose, as it pawed one of the cultivators, buckling his head inside his chest in a hideous crunch of bone and tearing flesh, while it jumped at another one. A lion can be fearsome, especially something as big as Arslan. He was a massive slobbering mass of muscle and feline grace. It jumped against one of the demons. The moment Arslan's paws touched the demon, he was already dead, so the crash against the ground, nor the literal ripping of his head from his torso was nothing but overkill. The rest of the demons ran away, everyone splitting in a different direction to distract the lion. At least this way, one will die while the rest will escape. Or so they thought. Arslan, heavy, massive and gigantic, was still surprisingly agile, far too agile for his size, as it bounded twice and had already torn through one of the running demons. Then it changed direction, licking his bloodied snout, and continued chasing after the closest one. No matter how fast the demons ran, once Arslan had his eyes focused on them, they'll be dead in seconds. Every one of them besides Chan Gui didn't escape away but came at me with a dagger in hand. While Arslan was busy chasing after the rest of the demons, Chan Gui wanted to take my life first. Wu Di and the rest ran towards him to try and stop him, but I was amazed at how agile the little-statured demon was. He sidestepped Yuzahan's sword strike, ducked under Xiaolang's saber, and jumped above Wu Di's fan, all in extremely dexterous and agile movements, acrobatic but moves of a great martial artist. Chan Gui didn't have fear in his eyes as he drew two blades that had a black liquid dripping from their tips. With crossed hands, he struck both daggers that were held in a backhanded grip at my chest. And I didn't dodge, I only didn't wish for the blades to go directly through my heart, and that was easily done with shifting my body a bit. One of the daggers pierced through my left lung and the other found its way to my liver. At that moment Wu Di and Xiaolang were wrathful for letting the little man pass beyond them and attack me, while Yuzahan's face became white. The rest of the spectators shook their heads, some even spoke about the loss of a newly born talent. But I grinned, as both my hands gripped tightly around Chan Gui's arms. Tightly pinning him in front of me, my only eye was opened wide, not in fright but in ecstasy. Yes. Delicious. I spoke, licking my bloodied mouth. Chan Gui shuddered, but couldn't move his hands. Fuck. Let me go. You should be dead already, that's a dragon's corrupted blood. Why don't you die yet? I even heard a few people inhaling loudly, fear gripping them as apparently they didn't want to be anywhere near this dragon's corrupted blood. But it was so tasty I could feel the poison in my mouth even if it had pierced my liver. Good poison, I said. Do you have some more? I asked honestly, and my question shook the man to the core. He stomped a foot on the ground and a blade emerged from the sole of his boot. He then struck at my right thigh with another type of poison. I shuddered as my body willingly welcomed the new poison. Good, more. Do you have anything else? I asked as I twisted my hands and broke both of Chan Gui's hands. The man screeched as he fell to the ground. I slowly removed the two daggers from my chest and liver, then moved to grab Chan Gui from the neck. Are you okay? Wu Di asked. Never felt better, I said. With all those wounds, man, you're gonna bleed to death. Xiaolang said, his slyness no longer there and genuine worry was apparent on his face. Don't worry, this is actually beneficial to me. Say, little monkey, do you have more of that poison? I asked. But the small demon squirmed and spat a needle right into my forehead, another type of poison. It was painful, this one. It didn't taste good and was far weaker than the other poisons. That's trash, give me the good stuff, I said as I grabbed the demon's pouch. What are you doing? Asked the demon. Don't touch my pouch, he cried, but I forcefully opened his holding bag. Even with his own mental imprint on it, it felt far easier to open it now that I have a divine sense. I threw Chun Gui to the ground and began pulling items from his pouch. He had so many things, most belonging to cultivators that he killed, to which I threw to the side and called, if any one of the sects present here know who these items belong to, please approach and take them back. Their deceased owners would feel better with their belongings back to their sections. But no one came to reclaim the treasures. I didn't care though, I need the poisons from this guy. I kept rummaging through his pouch, further pulling more precious treasures that I discarded like the trash they were. Chun Gui squirmed and tried to fight against me, willing to pit his life against the humiliation of having his belongings searched in plain sight. But a single stomp on his back was enough to force his face into the dirt. Man, that's just evil, Xiao Lang said, but he didn't have a disapproving look, only a sly grin. I never claimed sainthood, I said, then found what I was looking for, a bottle full of corrupted dragon blood. Ah, such exquisite smell, I said, to which many frowned. Brother Shen Bao, Wu Di said, his face as white as a sheet as he had his sleeve over his nose. I think your sense of smell has been damaged while you were under the heavenly tribulation. You're too kind, Brother Wu Di, Shen Bao, that smells like shit. Literal shit, shit tones of shit, man, Xiao Lang said. I grinned as I took a big gulp from the bottle and said, but it tastes like heaven. Yuzhen immediately threw up. Wu Di's already pale face grew paler. But when he saw my body immediately healing, he didn't comment. Brother Shen Bao's cultivation is peculiar. That corrupted dragon blood cannot be used for anything good, it's not even valuable for alchemy even if it's rare, as it tends to destroy ingredients. The most useful thing to use it for is poison, but you're drinking it like it's some good wine. Wu Di shook his head. You seem knowledgeable about alchemy, I said. It would be a good topic to discuss if not for some certain hassles, Wu Di said as he gestured with his chin at the men under my foot. Oh, dead. No, you're faking being dead, I said as I kicked the men in the ribs, to which he winced. Get up, get your stuff and get out of my sight. As for the things that belong to these cultivators, you're not allowed to take them with you, I said as I threw his pouch back to him. You're sure you want to let him go? Wu Di said. I'm not so evil to kill someone who brought me something so useful, but if he tries anything, I said as I consciously forced my divine sense on him. I will never show my face in front of you. Please let me go, oh great Shen Bao. Chun Gui said, pleading with tears streaming down his face. Bruh, you can seriously compete for an Oscar with that act. Just piss off, I said and turned to Wu Di. That drink was so good I don't even feel sore anymore. I'll still need to consolidate my cultivation. How about we go and have a bite? I asked. Yeah, we can accompany you, but a bite? I doubt I'll have the stomach to eat anything today, Xiao Lang said, and from the look of Wu Di and the disheveled Yuzhen, I suppose they were right. Well, I'm hungry, I said, so please lead the way. The group moved out and I followed after. Once we entered the inn, I ordered several courses of food. For some reason I was famished beyond humanly possible, and I ate and ate, tearing through meat, fish, and whatever was presented to me. The group with me looked at me as if I was a monster, but I didn't care. I bit through pork thighs with gravy dripping down my mouth as I gulped wine like water, and continued eating. Brother Shen Bao, you should chew, otherwise you'll have stomach troubles, Xiao Lang said, grinning. After chewing a couple of times, not thanks to his advice but in preparation for a retort, I said, I'm so hungry I think that I'll be wasting time chewing. Want a bite? I said as I handed Xiao Lang the pig's thigh, but he shook his head and raised both his hands. I'm sorry, still no stomach to eat. Especially after that display earlier. I shrugged, more for me then, and I continued eating. A satiety pill should help you calm your hunger, wouldn't it? Wu Di asked. I shook my head. My body, for some reason, is demanding sustenance. A satiety pill can help keep hunger away, but I feel that I'll collapse. Use your divine sense, I said. Immediately, a probing wave of energy came against my body and lingered a bit over my muscles, then retreated. Wu Di's expression turned complex. What's going on? Asked Xiao Lang. Shen Bao is right, his body is on the verge of deterioration. It seems that the heavenly tribulation lightning had burnt so much of his muscles that when it tried to heal him back, it focused on sustaining his muscles with nutrients his body had before. Wu Di said. That doesn't make sense. Usually the heavenly tribulation grants the cultivators that survive it heavenly chi, it doesn't interfere with their bodies to force rejuvenation. Xiao Lang said. Only I knew the answer to that question and I wasn't going to share. Actually, the heavenly tribulation isn't really a dick of a super omniscient power. It's actually nice. Basically, in terms that everyone could easily understand, the tribulation caused me pain, and after surviving the punishment, I felt sorry and wanted to apologize, so usually it would offer chi to help cultivators heal back from the damage that it caused them with bonus. But, I cannot cultivate heavenly chi, and heavens is proud, and wouldn't want to be known as not merciful. It couldn't heal me using its own powers, so it used the second best thing, my body, and forced it to rejuvenate the wounds and damage. But the downside to the second option heaven chose, was that it was I who's going to pay the price. For whatever selfish reason, heavens thought that it did me a favor by forcing my body to heal up. It did more harm than good, but thankfully I can easily supplement the nutrients that were forced to regenerate me with food, a lot of food. I continued eating vegetables for fibers, no matter how disgusting, meat for protein, fish bones even for calcium, and even fish eyes for various fats and other amino acids that were within foods that I didn't bother thinking too much before eating. After an hour of feasting, I had so many people watching our table with frightened looks. They couldn't believe how many plates had been presented to my table only to have been emptied immediately afterward. More. I said as I struck a mug on my table, and a servant hurried to pour me drink as another took the plates from the table and placed another plate full of dumplings. It feels like Shen Bao is more serious against food than the heavenly tribulation, Xiao Lang said, and Yuzahan giggled at his statement. That simple sentence caused the rest of the people in the inn to smile. Brother Shen Bao, congratulations on attaining core formation, one random cultivator said as he stood on my table. From his pouch he pulled a mug full of wine and placed it on my table. I took the mug and emptied it on one gulp, then slammed the bottom of the mug on the table in ecstatic joy. Good wine. I'm glad you like it, the cultivator said, and then left the area. More cultivators came in, some even shared some exotic foods they had in their pouches and placed them on the table. I was surprised by the actions the cultivators had done, and when I asked Wu Di why, he said, simple, you stomped all over that Chan Gui, giving back face to the cultivators. Though I would have killed him, you let him go. But it's for the best, this way he will live with shame following him forever. Ah, I said as I nodded, there it is again, face, fuck face. I grumbled under my breath and continued eating. Many cultivators offered more foods until one of them came and offered me a mug full of a dark bubbling liquid. It stank of a rancid smell and didn't look edible at all. The kid who gave me the mug was actually hesitant. It was as if he didn't think this was a good idea, and from the look of everyone around him, he honestly believed that offering me this mug of bubbling sludge was a bad idea. I'm sorry, I'll take it away, the kid said, but I grabbed his hand. He yelped in fright, that's fungal greed's torment. I said. Yes, it's highly poisonous. The kid said. No, highly toxic. I shook my head. Toxic and poisonous are two different things, I said as I grabbed the mug from his hand and downed it in one gulp. Good. I screeched as fumes came seething from my mouth. The fungal greed torment went down my stomach like heavenly juice. The toxic substance empowered my core and reinforced it, supplementing it from the chi it had lost in the earlier battle, and began rejuvenating me. My whole demeanor began radiating as my body relaxed and I no longer felt hungry anymore. That's some good concentrated stuff. Do you have more? I asked, but the kid shook his head. No worries, you saved me a lot of time. Here, I said as I threw the kid a soul-condensing pill. The whole room buzzed as everyone looked at each other, and then a few had some greedy looks in their eyes, mostly pointed at the kid. I think I just caused the kid a huge blunder. I can't accept this, the kid said as he tried to give me back the pill. I shook my head. That's your payment. I was actually putting the kid in a bad spot, but I needed to make a point clear to everyone here. One demon saw the pill and approached the kid. If you don't want the soul-condensing pill, I'll make sure to take good care of it. Let me keep it safe for you. The demon was a stereotypical hulking mass of muscles with 2 horns, scuffed hair, 2 large frontal fangs protruding from his lower jaw. He had a club strapped to his back and was wearing pants and had his upper torso bare for everyone to see the rippling muscles in them. A typical bully. Kid, do you remember when I told you that the fungal greed torment is toxic and not poison? The kid was at a loss as the large man was still coming his way with a snide smile on his face and extended hand as if expecting the pill to be handed without question. Why, yes. Let me give you a small demonstration on the difference between poison and toxin. I snapped my fingers and the hulking mass of muscles convulsed, his eyes flipped behind his skull and fell frothing at the mouth. Dead. This is a toxin, I said, and immediately everyone shuddered at what just happened. Unable to understand how the hulking man died before even knowing how. Fungal greed's torment, it's a mushroom that has a small microorganism living within it. I said as I stood up. In a sense, the fungal greed's torment, the plant itself is harmless, yet it cannot live without that small microorganism that creates toxin while it lives above the plant, and that toxin itself is what nurtures this plant. They cohabit. The fungal greed's torment is called that way because most people see it, they confound it with gold ingots. As its golden color attracts the attention of many people who touch it and die immediately after it's too late. But there was no gold in the mug you drank, Wu Di said. Yes, because the moment the fungal greed's torment is ripped from its root, it turns black as charcoal, a final ironical sneer at the man who was blinded by greed and pulled his own doom with his own hands. Still, how did this guy die? Xiao Lang asked. You didn't even touch him, nor did I see you attack. Oh now, did you? I said as I grinned. Use your divine sense, everyone should, but don't focus on the people around you, but the air itself, I said. The moment I said that, everyone in the room had their face turn pale as a sheet of paper. What the hell? What is that? Everyone had the same question as fear gripped their hearts. That's toxin, I said, grinning. This little kid here, I pointed, was carrying a time bomb. The mug, I said, and used my own divine sense to see what everyone was seeing. The mug on the table was constantly releasing toxin in the room, so much of it that it flooded the whole room, but it was harmless. The mug was what killed this man, I said. But, why didn't it harm us? Wu Di said. Well, it was simple, the toxin will not affect a man that I didn't want it to affect. The crowd was even more bewildered. The toxin would only affect a person that has been in direct contact with it, and since only I was the one who drank it, I'm the new host of the microorganisms, and as their host. I grinned, I'm their king, and if I want someone dead, they'll be dead. I said as I waved my hand. Anyone with their divine sense active would notice that the microorganisms in the air came rushing toward me and affixed themselves on my body. Damn, for a second there I thought you had us all as hostages, Xiao Lang said. If I wanted to take a hostage, I would have done so without the need of the fungal greed's torment. I have many other poisons, I said, and sat down. You should take that mug and burn it. Even if I had drunk most of it, there is still toxin there, I said to the kid, and he immediately took the mug and threw it in a nearby fireplace. You should always have your divine sense active, lest you die without knowing how, I advised everyone in the room, and they all took it seriously. This was no joke, they just realized that death could happen to them without them knowing. Divine sense expends a lot of chi, we can't have it active all the time. Some random cultivator said. Then don't spread it around you like a globe, just have it right above your skin, like a second layer of skin, this way you'll sense if something forging was trying to invade your body, I said. Many thanks, one of the kids around me said. Senior Shen Bao, you've taught us a valuable lesson, I'm indebted to you. I shrugged and waved the man off. No worries, advice costs nothing, I said to the kid, and the rest all began clasping their hands at me. You're becoming more and more famous, brother Shen Bao, Wu Di said. It's just basic human decency, if everyone shared advice we'll be better people, but most become arrogant due to the power they obtain when they cultivate and forget their origins. We're all humans, no matter how far on the path of Tao we go, we'll never change the fact that we're humans. And I'm not talking about the human race, I said as I looked at a few demons that were in the room, I'm talking about being a good person in a world where no one takes a second look at beggars in the street and deem anyone weaker than them nothing but trash. A kind word for the right person can flip their lives around. Demon, human, or celestial, we're all capable of emotion, and if we're able to share advice and be kind to the other we can progress far. Wise words, someone spoke, and his own words caused my body to shake. It seemed that someone powerful was listening to us. Suddenly a man accompanied by the three demons who raised the barrier when I was breaking through inside this variant came. He had a hood over his face and was covered from head to toe with a large robe. Seems that you're far wiser than I expected, the Ma said as he removed his hood, and I saw a demon not older than the age of 40 standing in the company of the three other guards. Several demons immediately kowtowed to the men. Hail His Majesty Tartagul. Ah shit, this is the guy whose daughter I ogled at when she was naked. Well, this is gonna be interesting. Shit, This is going to be problematic. Tardigul, king of the demons in this region, is no pushover. He seems to be on the cusp of reaching the soul formation stage. But he is definitely stopping his progress and chose to remain on the nascent soul stage. Not to mention, the 3 guards around him are all at the nascent soul. A fight here will definitely end with me dead, especially since the laws of this world forbid me from using X at his full power. Only X's soul formation power is enough to threaten the existence of these people. Still, so far they haven't attacked me, so I'm sure there is a way out of this blunder with his daughter and all. Thank you for your praise, I said as I raised a mug that has been filled for me immediately. Fully ignoring the mass of demons bowing to the king. Brat. You should bow to the king, one of the demons near me said. Brat. I said as I frowned at them and then stood up from where I was sitting. You seem to have forgotten what had just happened a few seconds ago. I said as I made a finger-snapping gesture. Please calm down, fellow cultivator Shen Bao, the king said. His voice didn't have any threatening tone to it. But it was serious, as the tone of a ruler who expected to be obeyed. I'm not a fan of listening to others, I said, nor bowing to those who do not rule over me. I would really appreciate if you could forgive this person. He is a patriot to the demon clan and had seen disgraces in you not bowing, though I'll never force another cultivator to bow to me if I didn't lord over them. I'm not your king, so I do not expect your bow. This child has not understood that, so please don't take it personally. He is just a good patriot. I waved the sniveling demon away and turned to face the king. You're wise, I said, grinning. Thank you, it comes with age and responsibility. How may I call you? Asked Tardigul. S. I already know he knows my name, but this gesture of his was a show of goodwill. I'm Shen Bao, I said. Good name, Silver Dragon. You seem like a dragon among men. I was told of your battle against heaven's tribulation. Not even my tribulation was as comparable to yours. You're a beacon to the younger generation. The king complimented. Empty words, but courtesy costs nothing. I clasped my hands to Tardigul and said, many thanks for your high praise. To what do I owe the pleasure of this royal visit? I said. We've received word that you have failed to partake in the Lord's tourney. Seeing that you have just reached the core formation, it would be a waste to not have you among the participants. I frowned, thought this tourney sounds all good. It's all about killing the others for some stupid ranking. I'm more interested in the good stuff that can be found in this small world than fighting pointless fights. I'm not interested in killing people just for the sake of killing. Tardigul glanced at the body of the big bully demon that was on the floor and raised one brow at me. He had it coming. He shouldn't have tried to steal a gift I gifted to another person, I replied, rather embarrassed, but I didn't show it. Still, it's not all about the killing. It seems that the rules haven't been fully explained to you, Tardigul said. I was not eligible, so I suppose no one cared to fully explain the rules to me. Right then, allow me to do so in their stead. In these demon lands, the fights against other disciples are only a preparation to allow 100 disciples to enter the Lord's Forbidden Valley. There are only 100 tokens that can allow people entry into the valley, and they have all been randomly thrown all over the demon lands. Many tokens have been found and their owners are hiding them, and the fights are mainly to take another person's token. If you receive a token, you'll be allowed entry to the valley, which will open tomorrow. Oh, I thought, and then received a message directly into my head. The voice belonged to Wu Di, me, Xiao Lang, and Yuzahan all have tokens. I already discussed with them that if we were to find another one, we'll hand it to you. Right then, so now that I know the rules, what benefits will I obtain from this valley? I asked. Many, actually. You're the one who's probably going to benefit the most from the valley, Tardigul said. A bewildered look was clearly painted on my face as Tardigul explained. The Lord's Forbidden Valley isn't forbidden just to emphasize its name. It actually hosts one of the most dangerous areas of these demon lands. Not even the other demon kings can enter it freely. Oh, so you're not the only king in these plains? How can I be? The demon lands expand to hundreds of millions of miles. Again, with the over-exaggerated mileage, hundreds of millions of miles is not something that can be grasped with simple measures. Hell, even the distance from the Earth to Mars is 54 million miles, and that's the minimum distance. It could increase to more than 400 miles if they are on the farthest parts of their orbits. Hell, even the fastest shuttle from Earth's technology would take 9 months of constant travel just to get to Mars. And they are describing the mileage of this small world with such huge numbers. The absurdity of this distance distracted me for a bit before the next words the king said brought me back to reality. Every one of the 4 demon kings will send their own disciples, cultivators, and demons to the valley. there is where the real competition will start. Then isn't it pointless to have this mass slaughter happening within your territory? Shouldn't you just personally hand over the token to the most eligible? I asked. Tardigul shook his head. It would not be fair. Luck is also an aspect of one's power, luck to find the token even if one is weak, luck to escape the hunt, and luck to actually steal the treasures from the valley. I won't interfere with the destiny of the cultivators if they are lucky enough to find the tokens. Who am I to take it from them and hand it to one who is unworthy of fate's eyes no matter how strong they are? Seems rather arbitrary, but still your kingdom, your rules, I replied. But what does that have to do with me? I asked. Right, there is something I'd like for you to bring me. The king said. I didn't like where this was going. It's a black nether rose. The hell is that? I wondered, but my body shuddered immediately. The poison god's book seemed restless the moment it heard the words. And I received a message in my head. Black nether rose. A sublime alchemical ingredient that can help a cultivator remove evil energy from their body and increase their cultivation speed. As a poison cultivator, the black nether rose is highly lethal to you, but if you refine it using the energy of a Een origin flower that you already consumed, it can switch its attributes to increase the evil energy within you, making your poison chi far more lethal and allow you to use it to better ends. I have managed to find one of these black nether roses in my travels, and it helped me greatly. As a poison cultivator, you're bound to the demonic path. It's ruthless, sordid, and evil. You're unbound by morals. Right and wrong mean nothing to you, but at the same time, you cannot go against your own heart's wish. You are evil, but a demonic path villain. Unlike a devil path's villain who needs to consume the lives of people, ravage their bodies, and instill terror in the world, a demonic cultivator is spared from such deeds and does not need to do them. For example, a devil cultivator can cultivate a skill called death sentence. It allows him to kill a man with a single thought if they were even one realm below them, and cause grievous internal injury if they were the same realm. But to cultivate this technique, a devil path cultivator would need to kill at least one person every day, and sacrifice 100 unborn children every 5 years. If he misses one day, he will be killed by his own skill. These are the limitation of the devil path. They give amazing abilities, but the costs are too weighty on one's conscience. The black nether rose would find more use for a devil cultivator, but even as a demon path cultivator you'll find great opportunities to it. However, beware of the dangers of the black nether rose. It will cause you madness and make you lose your sanity if you were to go against your own heart even once. You will fully fall from the demonic path and into the depraved devil path. Though if it is your wish, I shall never go against you. You're my disciple, and your happiness and future mean more to me than what the world thinks of you, even if I truly wish not to see you fall to the devil cultivation path. I thought a lot about what the book had mentioned and immediately came to an answer. Why do you wish to obtain such an evil thing? I asked. It's not for me, replied Tardigul. In fact, if you find it, I would rather you destroy it. Vitragul, my rival in another demonic country, is actually preparing a great insurgence of people to go to the valley. He wishes to obtain it and elevate his cultivation. Once he has the black nether rose, he will come at me and my people and raze us to the ground. He has been cultivating a devil technique that will make him unparalleled in his same realm, and if he were to obtain the black nether rose, then no one will be spared from his power. He will annex the whole demon lands and will focus his attention at the world above. I see, but why me? Why not everyone else? Though I hardly care about this world nor if this Vertigul guy assaulting the world of cultivators, it's really not my place to interfere. I have no benefits from this, and I'll only end up facing another person if I were to vie for things he wants. It has to be you, especially after your display. Because the black nether rose is inside a rift filled with poisonous creatures and herbs inside the Lord's Valley. Even with innumerable treasures, we couldn't obtain the rose, but it seems that Vitragul is going to send an entire army to get the rose, uncaring about the consequences, and if he throws his whole force there, and obtains it, it will be a win for him. I thought carefully about this. If what this man is saying is true, then I'll be going to a very beneficial place for me and my cultivation, but there is one thing that's bothering me. I focused my will and divine sense and managed to link my mind to Tardigul. You've been speaking freely in the presence of so many people. Aren't you afraid that there could be a spy among them and will warn Vitragul about this? I think you're actually trying to use me as a scapegoat or a distraction. You must have another reason, I said. I instantly received a divine sense reply. Brother Shen Bao is wise, but actually this is to your own benefit. How come? All I understood is that there is nothing beneficial to me. I'll be used and won't gain a thing. Besides the poison, but I won't clarify that to him. I have heard words that you had many pills, too many for any regular cultivator, pills you consumed when facing the heavenly tribulation, and pills you used when gifting children. I say you're an alchemist. The men said. And what does that have to do with anything? I asked. I have yet to verify this man's words for true or false. Because I have a map to a treasure far too enticing for you not to go there, Tartagul said. And I waited for a reply. When one of my henchmen was in the poison rift, he was chased by a fifth-tier beast, a venom-spitting skylark, Tartagul said. And in his escape, he managed to find a small cave where he hid and actually almost died inside the cave. He found a heart flame. Oh, now this is really interesting. Say, what color was that flame? I asked. The best one for you, a green one. Tartagul said, his eyes confident and his posture inviting. My mouth twitched as a wide grin crept up my face. Isn't that fascinating? I shuddered with anticipation. A heart flame, here in this world. It's not something easy to find. Hell, even in the worlds where the poison god traveled to, heart flames are as rare as phoenixes and dragons. And a green one at that, that's just a godsend. The poison book had already mentioned heart flames in one of its passages in alchemy, but I didn't give it much thought due to the difficulty of finding one, especially in a lower world such as the one I'm in, or at least the entirety of the country of Zhou. Heart flames are so rare that the book mentioned that there could only be one or two in entire solar systems. The heart flames are a strange thing. They're the best thing that one can use to heat up their cauldrons or outright use them directly to quench, purify and extract essence to make pills. They're spirits of fire condensed and gathered after eons in secluded places. And once they're matured, a person can come and refine them for their own use, making the heart flame a part of them. The heart flames are divided by color but not power because every heart flame is as strong as its sister in the same rank. Yes, heart flames can also be cultivated to reach higher ranks. Another thing, the color of the heart flame is related to its ability to create certain pills. A blue one is the best to create cold-type pills, yin related, a red one is best to make yang-type pills, heat, and fire. There are also black heart flames, though they are weaker in creating pills, but they're best when used in dark-type attacks, curses, or ghost cultivation. As for the green heart flame, it is the best one to create poisons. Even the poison god managed to get a heart flame, only he didn't find it, but rather bought it from an auction. I was not going to waste this opportunity, so I nodded at the old man. Too much risk still, I said. You're planning on using me as bait. If this Vitragul knows I'll be after the rose, he will definitely try and get me killed, but you're trying to use me as a distraction so that Vitragul focuses on me while you do your own thing and try to get the rose for yourself. I'm rather impressed, though no one would dare admit it. I shall. You've read through my thoughts. Then I can expect being betrayed, I said. That is if you are caught. I've already heard that for some strange reason you managed to use a flying treasure, so you'll have a great advantage. As for me, I'll also be sending a group of cultivators after you. In case you die or fail, they'll do their best to destroy the rose, but I will instruct them, that if you manage to obtain it, that you shall come to no harm. Also here, the Demon King said Ed threw me a piece of paper. I immediately swiped it with my hand and put it in my pouch. This is? I asked. It's the map for the green heart flame, Tartagul replied with all seriousness. Then aren't you afraid I'll get the heart flame and ignore the rose altogether? You can, but you'll literally have to pass by the rose before you get the flame. All I ask is for you to destroy it. It shouldn't take more than a fraction of a second of your time to have me in your favor. The king said. Too many variables, too many risks, too many kings with armies after the same rose, and I'm alone in the middle, though I have the advantage of poison and flight. The numerical advantage is a monster on its own. Courage cannot beat numbers, and numbers can kill a lion. Still, greed, a vicious and insidious plague in one's heart. I cannot bear to give up such an amazing treasure. A green heart flame is not something that I can give up this easy, but I'm not too stupid to risk my life based on the words of a man I just met. You said that a man that has been to the valley had seen the heart flame, I said. I wanted to make sure that this was not a trap. Yes, the old man replied. And he still lives. Why didn't he try and refine the flame? I asked. Because this wasn't simple. A heart flame is too damn hot for anyone below the soul formation level to survive, and the laws of this small demon world forbid the rise to this cultivation level within this realm. I believe you don't trust my words, but it's only natural. You can ask the man yourself. The king turned his head for a moment, sending a divine sense message to a hooded man next to him. The hooded man removed his hood and I saw it scarred with vicious burn marks. The demon then sent me a message. I was only at the peripheral limit of the heart flame and was damaged this much when I tried to refine it. I knew I didn't have the ability to obtain the heart, and we sent even more people but none of them came back alive. If you're an alchemist, you'll probably have a better chance. The men said, then covered his face. I sent another divine sense to the king and said, I've seen enough proof, the burns of heart flame is true, they cannot be healed unless one reaches above their cultivation realm or reforge their bodies. Your companion here is heavily damaged and I believe that only a heart flame can cause such damage that it will hinder a person's progress through the cultivation path. I replied. Then I believe you're satisfied. The king said. More than enough, but there is one issue left, I said. Which is? The king asked, his expressions becoming grimmer due to my unending questioning. How can I access the valley if I didn't partake in the tourney? I don't have a token. That's something easy to manage, the old man said and threw me a green circular token with a golden inscription on it. Tomb of Lords. I frowned for a bit after seeing the words Tomb of Lords. It seems this place is more like a graveyard than a valley and the naming sense had changed. Once you use your token to enter, it will disappear only to appear once the demon gates open once again. The king said. Now rest, tomorrow is a grand day. Then Tartagul and his company left the inn. What the hell was that? You've spoken mostly in sending, and I have no idea what was going on half the time. Why does he want you to go to such a dangerous place? Xiao Lang asked. Sometimes, it's best to be ignorant about matters, lest you're forced to reveal answers you wish not to have known, I said, and Xiao Lang immediately quieted down. He understood that what I'm about to do entailed something dangerous and he would rather not know things he didn't need to. I'll take my leave for the night, I have something to do, I said and left. After whistling once, Arslan came bounding and stopped in front of me. You've been out for a while, did you find any caves? The lion nodded. Take me to it, I said and jumped above the armored lion. The creature dashed forward and pounced above the city gate, not waiting for the guards to even open them. Then he continued running until he reached into the forest and began changing directions. Soon we arrived at a cave that had a couple of blood wolves inside it, but a single growl from Arslan had the wolves running away, whimpering and with their tails behind their backs. I went inside and pulled out the pouches of a cultivator that I had not opened since the day I found it. The crimson-robed cultivator from the Poison God's cave. That man had something on his pouch that the Poison God's book denied me to open, and now, it seems that it no longer had the same danger to me as the Poison God's book didn't react. Once I used my divine sense on the pouch, I noticed a restriction on it. It was a killing formation, a small one made by a great inscriber, meant to kill anyone who didn't have the right key to open this pouch. I sighed. I could have actually opened this the moment I learned inscriptions, but I thought it was some sort of curse or something else that might be too dangerous to tackle at the time. After using my brush and a few quick strokes, I broke through the inscription on the pouch and opened it. Finding inside it massive numbers of spirit stones, jewels, gold and a lot of clothes, even random house decorations, but on one side, there were some things I didn't expect to find. In the pouch of the crimson-robed cultivator were many impressive things. Bodhi roots, dragon grass extract, floric crimson acid, a 7th-tier demonic creature horn, even some strange-looking weapons, and armors. These things looked far too high-grade for the cultivator to have in his pouch. It seems that he managed to steal the treasury of an entire sect and escape with it, only to find doom at the Poison God's cave. Even the pouch's size was massive and it had so many cultivation manuals. Most were trash, nothing comparable to the Poison God's technique nor the Laughing Slaughteur's sanguine blade arts. But there was a single scroll that radiates golden light. It looked torn, an incomplete scroll of movement art. I read through it and found it wondrous, the technique to move one's body to make a person see not one but many clones of a person. A golden scripture, these things were amazing and rarer than Phoenix's feathers and Qilin horns. It's almost like a cloning technique, but the best thing is, this technique is not as simple as illusions of characters, but one can actually swap their location with any of the clones they create while they're using this movement technique to actually attack a person or escape from an attack. The technique, however, was missing a majority of its details, and only the part where one can create 3 clones and exchange positions with them was mentioned. As for even higher application of this said technique, it seems that I'll need to be lucky to find it or just forget about it. Still, this movement technique is good, and if I could combine it with my poison escape, then I can create something amazing. Clones that can attack and once attacked turn to poison smoke bombs. Pretty amazing stuff. I pulled the scroll to the side and continued rummaging through the person's pouch. Most items inside it were good stuff for alchemy and crafting, but there wasn't anything of great value. Until I found a small blue pearl. It was as big as a baby's fist. It was inscribed with a great deal of inscriptions, a defensive treasure, but it was a low-quality defensive treasure. What interested me in the pearl was how the moment I had it in my palm, it reflected my face clearly on top of it like a clear mirror. I pulled up my brush and began inscribing on the pearl, removing entire rows of inscriptions and adding more. I was going to make this into a pretty damn good defensive treasure, but unlike any other treasure, this small pearl will be one of a kind. It took me the better part of a day to lay the basic layout of the inscriptions I was going to use. Once I was done, I grabbed the pearl and did what no one would ever think of. I jammed it into my missing eye socket. I felt an immediate tingling in my eye, then as if struck by lightning the veins on my face pumped up, then the pearl shone brightly as the inscriptions were fully fused to my body. After such a long time, I was finally able to see, though not like anyone can. My vision was squeamish. As a matter of fact, my normal eye could see normally, but the fake one was white and black. It was not a perfect vision, but rather a rough translation of the layout in front of me. Anyone would think this was nothing but a waste of time, as the use of one regular eye is better than this mix of black and white atop regular colors. But in fact, the monochrome vision wasn't that bad. It enabled me to see heat signatures, and had another vast array of specialties. For example, I blinked with my fake eye and was actually able to switch the monochrome vision to a full night vision. Even if cultivators had good eyesight, night vision is not easy. Most would use their divine sense to see, but what if they're in a situation where they can't expand their divine sense, in case it clashed with another divine sense, and have their location revealed? Finally, the best inscription I added was the same one I had on X's body. Nauseating, torment, and torture illusions if one were to use their divine sense on me. The eye will cause them a sudden shock and would allow me time to either escape or retaliate if in the middle of a fight. Not to mention the ability to project such illusions if I need to. The only downside is, I couldn't use a spirit stone to power this little pearl, and I had to adjust my inscriptions to work with my poison chi. All thanks to the inscriptions on the poison god's flying sword. It already had a layout of a working poison chi transfer array that I could use, and it easily channeled my inner chi into the fake eye. I still used a patch to cover my eye. It was too big and too blue, and anyone would be irritated by the disproportioned eyes I have, but with a small eye patch, I was able to have all the benefits of the eye without any hindrance to its ability. It could still see heat signatures even if covered. Once I was done with the eye and felt it laying comfortably in my eye socket, I stood up. It was already morning and I needed to move towards the valley. I did a quick study of the map Tardigul gave me and rode on my flying sword. Arslan whimpered as I was leaving him behind, but after a stern look, and a few words, he understood that it would only bring him harm if I were to take him with me to a poisonous valley. Also, he is pretty big and can be too conspicuous for a stealth mission. Now, it's time to get all stealthy, but why do I have this feeling that as much as stealthy as I wish to be, there was going to be a lot of killing happening in this venture? I rode on the poison god's flying sword and sped through the terrain, following the map for the Lord's tomb. It didn't take me much to arrive there and find a massive open cave entrance devoid of people. It was only natural. It took me a long time to finish the pearl, and anyone who came here had already entered using the token. Still seeing a few bodies littering the ground meant that many had lost their lives and had to give up their tokens for others. I came down from my sword and placed it in my pouch, then walked into the cave. Just as I arrived to the entrance, a barrier appeared in front of me. The barrier had a wide range of inscriptions on it. Most of them had been written using the demonic inscription language. If I were to try and open the gate by brute forcing it as I did in the Laughing Slaughterer's pagoda, I'd certainly die. Know that this barrier was better than an ascendant cultivator's barrier, but because this one was a hostile barrier and will immediately kill anyone who tried to tamper with it. The token was the only way for me to enter, and I had one on my hand. The moment I presented the token, the barrier opened up, allowing me entry, and just as I set foot on the cave's floor, I felt a massive surge of spiritual chi rotating within the cave. The cave was small and was more like a tunnel leading inside, and just as I arrived at the other side of the tunnel, I saw the skies, but unlike the demonic red-colored skies of the demon lands, the sky inside this tomb was bright and blue. The whole scenery was an amazing formation of high mountains that were shaped like a massive bowl. Though I couldn't see the whole shape of this place from my position, looking at the map that Tardigul gave me, I could understand the layout of this place. Like I had mentioned, the whole place was like a bowl made of mountains, and the reason why the sky was blue was due to another inscription that covered this whole area like the cover of a cooking pot. Since the laws of the demon lands forbid flight, no one can fly above this place and try to enter without the token, and even if they try to climb the steep mountains, they still can't go beyond the barrier. The whole land was massive. It would take months of travel to fully explore the whole Lord's tomb. It had valleys, forests, and swamps all over the place, and the place where the Black Nether Rose lived was pretty far away from me. The map also pointed several entrances to the Lord's tomb, 4 in total, and each was protected and guarded by one of the 4 demon kings of this demon land. Finally, there was a large pool in the middle of this place. And in the middle of this pool was a massive square pillar that had a staircase leading all the way to the top. Besides my own mission to obtain the Black Nether Rose and the Viridian Heart Flame. Changed the name from Green to Viridian, because it sounds cooler. 3. Most came here for the Lord's tomb, and it was at the top of this pillar. There is a competitive place where cultivators can compete for resources and materials, and the rewards are great and beneficial to them. But for me, the Viridian Heart Flame was far too enticing for me to go and fight for resources that were going nowhere. Though sadly, the Lord's tomb will remain open for exactly 1 month, I'll need to hurry up. Once I made sure no one was nearby, I summoned my flying sword again and jumped on it, then I followed the map that led to the Poison Valley. It took me less than 2 hours to meet people, a group of demons from Vitragul's kingdom. When they saw me flying through them, they did the unthinkable, trying to use divine sense to scry and investigate me. But the moment their divine sense touched my body, the sky pearl tingled and its inscriptions were triggered, a bright light shone from behind my eye patch, and then loud screams of pain and agonized lurching sounds echoed around me. I continued unperturbed, leaving a group of cultivators frightened beyond fear, shuddering in their place. It's quite nasty. If anyone was prepared and knew what to expect, they'll never use their divine sense like they just did. There were 2 methods of using one's divine sense on another person. The first is to forcefully apply it to another person, a pervasive measure to see into the person's body, meridians, and their cultivation. But this is actually not the best method. Not even the poison god did this, because it didn't just invade a person's body, but also it would allow the person to retaliate. Sending your divine sense into another person's body was the same as asking for your hand to be chopped. The second method was less overbearing, a gentle scry, to have one's divine sense just be on top of a person's skin. It would do the same as you could have your divine sense skin the person's residual spiritual chi and immediately gouge their strength, and if the other person tried to assault this divine sense since you haven't pervaded their body, you could easily retract yours. Though the second method was the safest, it was also the most complicated and required a lot of experience to understand chi waves that were emanating from another person, because some cultivators have such deep cultivation that they could easily hide their chi release and look like mortals. But there were always deeper seas and higher mountains, and experience can make one know the level of another person even if they make themselves look and feel like mortals. All of this was mentioned in a passage of the Poison God's book. Thankfully, the book still taught me many things, and since I unlocked the core formation stage, the book's instructions were heavily related to cultivation advice instead of skills and abilities. It seems that the book was preparing me to tackle yet another venture, but it has yet to explain it. I could feel the book trying to teach me on various subjects to cement my cultivation had foundations. I continued flying through the forest, with my divine sense spread around me, touching just barely on the rims of objects and not trying to bore through them. I wanted to understand my surrounding before I made the same mistake as those demons just did. It would be unwise to have one's divine sense spread, inspecting everything lest it would touch upon the body of a ferocious beast that one can't afford to agitate. After a while of traveling, I managed to find a few spiritual plants, nothing too fancy, but still useful 7th grade herbs. I plucked them and continued moving. I also managed to sense the presence of several blood wolves that were running in a pack towards something in the distance. They seemed to be agitated and were in a hurry. I decided to follow them but still keep my distance. Wolves always choose to run against the wind so that their scent won't alarm their prey, and if I moved using flight behind them they'll not be alert to me. And as a bonus, they too were going in the same direction of the Poison Valley. As I've gotten closer, I heard a piercing blow of a flute. It wasn't a sonorous melody, but more like the screech of one's fingernails on a blackboard. And the wolves whimpered and they increased their speed. It seems that they're chasing something. After moving behind the wolves for a few more minutes we arrived at a clearing, where the wolves spread out and surrounded a group of cultivators. And among them was a bloodied and wounded kid, the same kid that I gave him a spiritual pill yesterday. Among the wolves stood 3 cultivators. 2 of them were in the middle stage of core creation. As for the one who seemed to be their leader seemed to be at least the 7th stage of core cultivation. He had an ethereal demeanor, standing tall with a hand behind his back and a smile that made him look like the most pious and noblest of nobles, yet his eyes dripped of venomous greed. "Hand it over, Chew, you're unworthy of that pill, it will do you no good, you don't have the talent," the leader of the assailants said. "Be wise, kid, Second Prince Wu doesn't give opportunities too frequently." One of the men next to the boss, Wu as his name appears to be, said. "Second Prince," another one spoke after licking his face, "there are a couple of beauties with that kid, if I can get you the pill, can I?" "Do as you wish, I don't want to dirty my hand with hitting mud," Second Prince said. The bloodied kid struggled to stand up, especially with all the wounds on his body and a few of his comrades lying next to him, heavily injured. The kid held a sword with shaky hands and said, "I told you, I already used the pill," he said, gritting his teeth. "You're too stupid for your own good, you were already on the cusp of reaching the second realm of core cultivation, and if you had consumed the pill you'd already broken through, I bet you still have it and wanted to use it after you break through, so that way you'll jump from second to third directly." The Second Prince analyzed, and I was impressed. He figured out the kid immediately, especially from the look of the kid's now anxious face. "I'll give you the pill, but you'll have to let everyone go," the kid said. The prince thought for a moment and said, "Okay then, hand it over." The kid hesitated for a second and threw the pill at the Second Prince. But the moment the pill was in the prince's hand, his lips curled in a vicious smile. "Fool, you just gave up your only leverage." "Kill them," the prince said dismissively and turned away. "You liar," the kid said as the two cultivators approached him. A couple of girls next to the mug kid whimpered as the vicious and lustful looks of the prince's henchmen looked at them with clothes-tearing gazes. "I never was honest in any of my deals, and even if I never was called a liar, do you know why?" the prince said, and his grin turned even more evil as he looked down at the kid. "Because no one lived to denounce my honesty." The kid laughed as he raised the pill as if to consume it. But the moment he released it to have it drop down his mouth, nothing fell. I had already come down and swooped the pill from him. The Second Prince frowned, then looked at me. I was standing right next to him. "Old man, what are you doing?" he asked. "I can ask you the same question, what are you doing?" The kid frowned, his face turned ugly from rage. "Kill him first," he ordered as he pointed at me. "Damn, old man, I was going to have some fun but you just came and ruined it," one of the two brawny kids said as he drew his sword and came at me. I looked at the men dismissively, with a dead expression as he approached me, sword extending in a slash aimed at my head. I had one hand behind my back and raised the other one to block the blow. In truth, blocking a sword blow from a cultivator at the middle stages of core formation while I just broke through the first layer of core formation would undoubtedly end up with me being dead, but I used my sleeves to do the job for me. The sword struck against my sleeve and broke in two. The residual force from the exchange caused the cultivator, who had wide eyes from shock in front of me, to stagger and couldn't evade the tip of creeping demise that bore through his neck, in and out, and his life was gone. The men fell to the ground, dead beyond dead, and not even gods can save him as the poison coating my blade did quick work of his vital organs, destroying them before he could even breath his last. "What?" the second henchman said. "Why you, how dare you kill my underling," said the pretty boy, but he didn't seem rash enough to try and avenge him. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted. "Ah, here it comes. Do you know who my daddy is, cringe?" "I don't know, and I don't care, but what I do know is, how dare you take things I have given to others?" I looked the men in the eyes. Wait, what was the sentence again? Ah yes, I remembered, you must be tired of living. If you want to be edgelord cringy, then I can also be edgelord cringy times 100. The second henchman jumped into the fray. He used a great curved saber and spun as he swung his blade, adding more strength to the already clear-cutting ability of the great curved blade he had. The men came at me spinning like a top, flashy, overbearing, and outright stupid. As the spinning sword was about to slash me in two, I took a single step back, then thrust my sword forward exactly when his sword had missed me, and his back was now exposed to me. Creeping demise tore through the man's back muscles like a needle and stabbed into his upper torso. Luckily it hit his heart, not for me, but for him, as he died instantly afterward. Because my sword was coated in poison, if it missed his heart, he'll have suffered a pain 10 times worse than death. The last of the three had his face pale to the color of ash. He looked at me in fright, yet immediately he roared as if to regain his bearings and shake away his hesitation and frightened emotions. He then pulled an ebony flute that was decorated in gold and jade rings. He blew on it and the blood wolves surrounding us howled. The pack of wolves came charging at me, to which I turned and opened my mouth, then spat a concentrated burst of purple-colored poison, based on the effects of the paralyzing braided mourning petal, the last gift I received from the Purple Cloud sect. The smoke spread out in a pervasive manner as it assaulted the sensitive noses of the enraged wolf, then made them shudder and fall unable to move a muscle. One of the wolves seemed to have more sense than the rest and decided to come at me from the back, where the poison would take slightly more time to spread. As he jumped, I held both my hands forward, both of them shaped like the mouth of a snake. Twisted snake. My hands flashed blurred and struck at the dazed wolf. The sight of my hands moving from left to right in utter mesmerizing patterns was so illusionary that the wolf was unable to determine which hand was the one that was going to strike as he lunged at me. Yet no matter how powerful the wolf's eyesight is, it will only work against it. As he saw my hands coming down on him from above his head, my hands had already jabbed at the wolf's throat, ripping it from its place. The last look of the wolf's eyes was that of confusion mixed with pain. The wolf dropped to the ground, struggling for one last breath that will never come, and as for the rest, no matter how strong the complement of that flute, it was not as strong as death. For any wolf that wasn't afflicted with the mortal braided mourning petal, they scurried away whimpering from fear. No one wants to face poison. The kid blew his whistle several times over, but no wolf, monster, or creature replied as he found himself alone. In his own indignation he howled and shouted, "I'm almost at the core formation peak. I cannot believe you'll be my match. Even if you killed these wolves, you're nothing but a first-layer core cultivator," he said and dashed at me. "Take my blow." "Fearless sword," the kid shouted as he charged at me with an extended thrust. Not mentioning the cringiness of this kid's words, his sword skill was actually impressive. It was a good sword art and was quite similar to the Laughing Slaughterer's own sanguine blade. But I pulled Creeping Demise. Compared to the man's massively long sword, mine was like a needle, but I had a slight advantage. I was calm. And the kid, even if he used whatever art he had, would have a hard time piercing through my clothes I inscribed and crafted using the skin of that jade serpent X killed in the Laughing Slaughterer's training grounds. The kid's sword tried to pierce through my chest and I grinned as I charged at the kid using the Laughing Slaughterer's own sword art, Sanguine Thrust. My sword, my motions, my whole body lunged forward like an unsheathed blade, disregarding any thoughts of self-preservation and charging in an attack that will be the pinnacle of trait of life. The kid noticed my lack of regard for self-preservation as I looked like I was about to impale myself on his sword, but at the same time, if I were to succeed, I will have his life as well. "Fearless sword, you said, that's nothing but talk." I grinned as the kid realized what was going to happen if he kept moving. Fear and the thought of losing one's life, especially someone as sheltered as this kid, someone who is a prince and has been doing whatever he pleased for all of his life, he would never dare risk his life against a nobody, and the obvious result came in immediately. The kid faltered, and tried to forcefully stop his charge. He dodged to the side only to have me capitulate on his hesitation. I was not as strong as him, nor as fast, clearly from the difference in cultivation, but all that advantage he had was lost because he hesitated for a moment. The time it took him to cancel his attack and change his direction was already more than enough for me to close the gap and actually nick the kid's left arm. The kid skidded to the side, huffing, his face paler than a ghost. "You mad? If you want to die, why the hell do you want to bring me with you?" Just as he finished his words, he lurched a disgusting pile of blood. What the fuck?" the kid said, his body was already shuddering. I unsheathed Creeping Demise and walked away from the kid and toward the boy and two girls with him. "Where the hell do you think?" The kid's words were stopped by another fit of throwing up blood. He wiped the blood from his mouth, pointed at me with his sword and said again, "This prince hasn't allowed you to leave yet." "The hell are you talking about?" "Oh my mo. Shindiru, sorry but I really had to XD. "The hell are you saying?" the kid replied, confusion and mild nausea clear on his face. I smiled at the prince, "You wouldn't get it," and turned away from him to the kids before the prince's face began shuddering, his limbs shaking, and then he fell face forward with his eyes rolled back. I shook my head, not at the kid's death, but the cruelty of my own self. Though I don't regret having killed him, I only regret my lack of emotion at the death of 3 persons. Such sadness, such is this life. Life means nothing in a world of cultivation, and only the strong thrive. Especially, since in a world of cultivation, people and monsters are so numerous that the death of a few 100,000 isn't even worth mentioning in some countries. Death happen all the time, and it seems that even my moral compass has been adjusted to fit into this world's view of human life. "Kid, You should take good care of your own possessions, I said. The kid looked at me with angry eyes and said, to be completely fair, you shoved this lot of problem down my throat. I never asked for that pill, and even if you wanted to reward me, privacy man, the kid said and sighed. Do you regret having the pill? I asked. Though it was unfair to the kid, I wanted to know his real answer. No, birds die for food and man dies for wealth. This pill will help me along the martial path, and if it brings issues such as these, then I'm sure it's worth the trouble. Still, you should really be careful, Uncle Shen Bao, the kid said. Uncle again, yeah, I remember my appearance changed from an old man to that of a middle old man. Why is that? I asked. Well, that kid you just killed is the second prince of King Wu, from the Futian Kingdom. It's a neighboring kingdom to the Zhou country. Not fully understanding where the kid was going, I gestured to him to continue explaining. Sigh, well, King Wu has 7 children, they're all vying for his throne once he dies, though he wouldn't bat an eye if one of his sons killed each other for the throne. Don't expect him to sit tight as a random person kills his son. How is he to know who killed his son? I left no witnesses, unless you're saying you'll be a little telltale. I said as I placed my hand on the hilt of my sword. Hold up, the kid said as he raised both hands in surrender. You somehow don't know this apparently, which is pretty weird. The princes and people of high regards, geniuses of sex and anyone with an interesting title, life or regard to certain factions or sect would usually have a sliver of their souls inside a jade piece, and these jade pieces would break once the life of said person has been claimed. Also, it allows the jade to display one last image of the person who killed the jade owner. Basically, they have a mugshot of me. Well, that's not good, I frowned. Technically, it's not that grave. As long as you don't ever set foot in the Wu Kingdom, you'll be mostly okay, unless the king sends hired killers and assassins after you, which I doubt would not happen, the kid replied in an infuriating shrug. I sighed. Man, so much trouble for an arrogant prick, I said as I went to the 3 kids and took their holding bags. Their content was not bad, especially the prince. He already had defensive treasures on him, but sadly he never used any of them, and the most interesting was the flute. I inspected the flute as much as I could. Besides the small grooves of jade and beautiful designs, there was nothing inside it that would explain why it could influence other animals. No inscriptions and no source of power or energy. This thing was strange. I kept the flute on my person as I went to check up on the kid and the 2 girls with him. Any injuries? I asked as I looked at the abashed group of kids. A few scratches and some bruises. Han Er has a broken rib though, she can't continue forward. I think we'll stay near the exit of the Lord's tomb until she heals. The kid said, but worry was clear on his face. Here you go, kid, I said as I threw him a pill bottle. Damn, old man, the last pill you gave me brought with it some trouble, now a whole bottle. Heck, if this wasn't healing pills, I say you are tempting fate to kill me. The kid said smilingly, though I understood that he meant it as a joke. I failed to understand the meaning. If you don't want it, I'll take it back, I said as I showed him my hand. No. We're really in need of these. Here, Han Er, schwer, he said, and he handed the girls a pill each that they ate and sat meditating. I'm in your debt, Shen Bao. I'll make sure to repay this favor when I can, the kid said. I waved my hand in dismissal. Don't worry about it. Still, I was impressed as I looked at the group. Han Er and schwer, the suffix at the end mean a close person, family. Perhaps even lover if it's the latter. Damn, this kid can pull. I grinned at the kid and turned to leave. Are you leaving, Uncle Shen Bao? The kid asked. Yes, I still have a mission to do. Right, the rose. The kid replied. I frowned. To be honest, I actually understand now how privacy could help a lot. That damn Tartagul should have relayed the mission to me in private. I guess it's payback for you having peeped at his daughter. Heck, kid, you think I look like a creepy old peeping Tom? Actually, you have an evil expression to you, so I wouldn't deny it. Courting death, aren't you? I said, feigning anger. The kid held both his hands. I apologize, I'll never do it again, he said, also feigning apology. The kid was nice and had a good air about him. Hope to see you later, train well, and train hard, I said. Then I headed towards the Poison Valley. The map that Tartagul gave me had clear indications of where the valley would be, and I'm not that far. I jumped on my flying sword and had it fly forward towards the valley. If even that little kid knows where I'm going, then it's definitely a certainty that those from Vitragul's side already know it. Vitragul would definitely have a lot of people shoving their faces into danger to get the black nether rose for him, and I'm already late because I was playing around with the sky pearl I have for an eye now. So I'll need to hurry up. I infused more poison chi into my sword and my speed increased exponentially. I raced through the trees, small monsters, and even away from shocked cultivators who shouted for me to halt, but I ignored them. As long as they cannot catch up to me, there was no need for me to stop and measure dick size with them. An hour later, the forest darkened, as it seemed that nighttime has come and imposed itself on this domed prison that's called Lord's Tomb. I removed the eye patch on my fake eye, and the sky pearl shone as it began translating the view and sending uninterrupted input into my brain that translated it automatically into images. Nothing seemed to be in the vicinity, but some heat signatures of creatures hidden under the ground or within the trees gave me a sense of prudence. Many monsters have been hiding within this jungle-like area and were hard to spot with mere sight. Unless one used their divine sense they wouldn't spot them. My sight caught the silhouette of a few cultivators that were going at a full sprint towards the valley. There were more than 20 of them and they raced to the valley as their lives depended on it. I urged my sword to take a roundabout way and keep moving. Though I could have flown high and unimpeded by the numerous trees, I'll be an easy shot to any cultivator with a ranged spell and good aim. I'd rather remain within cover and move than be a sitting duck to anyone with extra chi. After a while, I noticed 5 of the 20 split up and head towards me. Though they were sprinting, I was amazed that they could actually keep up with me if they put their minds to it. This was bad. They definitely noticed me and I needed to increase the gap or I'll be caught in a fight I don't want to have. The 5 that split from the group had 3 demons and 2 cultivators among them, easy to identify due to the massive heat signatures the demon horns projected in the night. But thankfully they were behind me and I only needed to stall them. I spat a gout of joyful smoke behind me. There was no need to use any poison too toxic for them. I don't want to kill people just because I can. There is no enmity or hostility between us yet, so I'll have them enjoy a good whiff of high. The group behind me immediately stopped once they encountered the poisonous cloud. One of them used a talisman to block the gas, but another shouted at him. I could clearly hear it even as I widened the gap, that the second person told the first who used the talisman it was a waste and this was not a harmful poison. The group picked up their pace, but I had long since gone off their divine sense range. If I continued at this rate I should arrive at the Poison Valley and have half an hour head start, but that won't be much, especially if the Poison Valley was as dangerous as Tartagul had said. A couple of hours later I arrived at the entrance of the Poison Valley, and as its name suggested, it was a valley of death. Skeletons of dead animals, creatures, and even humans and demons littered the place. Evil chi propagated in the place and seeped through the dark plants and trees like a pervasive gaseous substance. It was so thick that one could even see the evil chi with one's eye. This is a great area to cultivate in energy. Though I'll never be able to cultivate it due to my inability to cultivate the world's natural energy, it would be an amazing place for a demonic or devil cultivator aside from me. I continued flying through the valley that had 2 wide cliffs acting as walls inside it. The cliffs would usually be split by a massive wall in the middle that led to 2 different paths, and even these paths would be split again. It was like a maze, and without the map from Tartagul, I'd have a hard time finding the black nether rose. After a few twists and turns, I met my first hurdle, blood bats, so many of them in fact that trying to fight them is nothing more than suicide. I spat another breath of joyful weed at the bats and dashed in between them. I could have used a more powerful poisonous substance, but it would not be beneficial to me. For 2 reasons. The first is I would actually kill many of the bats, and that would be bad because their corpses would make it obvious for anyone who was chasing after me to know where I passed. The second thing is, why make it easier for the ones following me? If the blood bats are stoned for a few moments they'll regain their bearing fast, and be ruder to the ones perusing me as I'll have already gone past them. Soon after my poison cloud washed over the bats, they fell gurgling and struggling. Some even hissed and squealed, but none looked to be on the verge of death. They'll soon be able to rid themselves of the joyful weed effect. I continued flying forward and grabbed a few plants that were growing on the side of the canyon. It would be a waste not to take these plants as they were toxic and spiritual in nature and could work great in making pills and concoctions. As I continued forward I met several other monsters and demonic creatures, snakes that coiled around dead trees, scorpions that dove through the ground like it was mud, and toads that croaked and tried to take me out with their fast, sound barrier-breaking tongues. I didn't want to waste time with these creatures, so I escaped whenever I had the chance and avoided battles I didn't need to take. I'm not some main character in a story, and wasting time fighting these things would only end up exhausting me. I'm not too proud to think I'll be saved by some stupidly bad scripted divine plot armor. I'll need to make the best of my current situation and avoid any circumstance that proves of no value to me or my current objective. Life is easy to lose, especially in a cultivation world, and there is a fine line between cowardice and prudence. Once I was away from the massive numbers of creatures inhabiting the valley, I found the location of the Black Nether Rose. It was a cave that was carved inside one of the walls of the valley. A few trees were covering the entrance, but it was obvious to anyone who can use a divine sense. The cave didn't seem to be hard to access, and all the trouble Tardigool had said about getting the rose seemed unfounded. I mean, the few creatures would be a hassle, but with dedication and a few well-trained people one could easily go beyond them, so why couldn't they get the rose? My question was immediately answered as I noticed a creature peering from within the trees that were the cave's entrance. I was lucky enough to be behind cover and hid from the creature's sight. It was a massive toad, with several pustules and growing bulges of poisonous liquid that squirmed above its skin. The toad was ugly to behold, and it croaked with might strong enough that I feared my eardrums were about to burst. This is a 6th-grade demonic beast. Damn you, Demon King, you never said anything about a 6th-grade demonic beast. Blight-bearing toad. A creature that is most suitable to accompany you, disciple of mine. A blight-bearing toad is the best furnace to condense and store some of the most lethal poison in the world. In a certain sense, the blight-bearing toad almost holds the same ability as me and you, but it has a poor battling prow. That is, unless it ascends, and it can become a harbinger of pestilence and doom. I have also raised a blight-bearing toad, and it proved extremely useful to my ventures. Sadly, it had died when I faced against a fearsome foe, ruler of the Rain Realm, Tianyu, as it gave its life in order to protect mine and inflicted several diseases and sicknesses upon my enemy. Though it would have been a great boon to your arsenal if you were to have a blight-bearing toad as a companion, it cannot be this one, as it seems to have reached the end of its natural lifespan and it had failed to cultivate to the next level. Though be warned, this very toad seems to have many poisons and diseases within it, and I'm sure some of them are more powerful than your current cultivation realm, that they could outright annihilate you. Now, this is kinda worrisome, not the fact that the blight-bearing toad is hella powerful, but the book seems to be more and more sentient. Could the poison god really be dead? How come the book be able to perfectly analyze and describe events that I just encountered if the owner is dead? But I'm in a world of cultivation, so nothing is far-fetched. It could be a figment of the owner's memories and analysis hidden within the book. This figment is enough to have a simple, comprehensive and understanding conscious within the book. But I should be a bit wary. I don't like keeping things that could think for themselves, lest it would influence me to do things I don't want. I decided to pay more attention to the book's interventions from now on. Though it never brought me disadvantages, I wouldn't blindly trust the book from now on. I'll at least take a careful look at the options it presents me before acting. Now with the blight-bearing toad here, it would be pretty hard for me to infiltrate and steal the rose. But if I stay here, I'll definitely be noticed by the cultivators behind me. Then I had a thought, a pretty nasty crazy thought, so crazy that it might just work. I grinned as I went into the cave, and took note of the whole area. I made sure to make light steps and not use any chi, even my own poison chi, as it would undoubtedly notify the toad. Once I peered into the cave, I managed to memorize the layout. There was a rose all right. It was pretty big, as big as a human in fact, and the toad seemed to be happily resting by its side. It looked right and left every few seconds, careful of its surroundings. It seemed that the toad had sensed me arriving, and instead of going out to look for me, it decided to stay right next to its treasure and wait for me to act first. The cave was vast but had several groves and rocks protruding all over it, good hiding spots. Also behind the toad, there seemed to be a passage that led deeper inside the cave layout. That's where the heart flame should be, as I could feel heat surging from that entrance. Damn smart little bugger. The toad was as large as a damn elephant, so little was not a perfect description, and it looked lazy as it gazed at the rose, mesmerized by it. Thankfully, due to the size of the toad, if I make it into the cave behind it, it won't be able to chase after me. But I'm not gonna bet my life on that. The toad could easily break the cave and hunt me down. That's of course if it didn't want to just outright split me in half with its massive tongue. Back to my task. In fact, it's easy to destroy the rose. It would be pretty simple, especially with my revolver. But I need the rose. I could use it in making a few pills that will help me a lot in my cultivation. But how to get the toad out of its cave will not be easy. Suddenly, I heard a few booms and echoes outside the cave. It seems that the cultivators and demons sent by Vitragul are nearby. The toad reared up and then sat back down. It decided that it would stay and guard its treasure than try and leave. I'm more than certain that the toad knows I'm here and would rather remain here than be lured outside. Pesky little bugger. I kept hiding until I sensed a divine sense scrying around me, but the moment it came in contact with me, it recoiled as my sky pearl sent the user of the divine sense painful images of death and torture. I heard a loud yelp from outside. Thankfully the yelp gave me a few seconds as the toad warily glanced at the entrance and I was able to move even deeper into the cave and hid far away from the toad. Suddenly, I saw a few shadows entering the cave, and then the toad angrily stood up and croaked loud enough that the whole cave shuddered. "This is the toad Lord Vitra warned us about. Ready the formation," the first man said. He looked like a cultivator that came from a prominent sect, especially with all of his white and heavily decorated sect robes. A few other cultivators stepped in, all of them holding small flags. The first cultivator added, "Don't use divine sense, the toad seems to be able to retaliate. It will break your will," he said. Thankfully the sky pearl inscription helped me there. They don't seem to have noticed my presence, and if I keep hidden I'll be able to fish in muddy waters. What's the proverb? When the clam and the catfish fight, it's the fisherman who profits, or something like that. I kept watch on the standoff, but the toad didn't even seem bothered with the few cultivators. It simply croaked like a regular dumb toad. Then when one of the cultivators planted the first flag, his head flew off. I couldn't even see it, but the toad's tongue was so damn fast that the cultivator didn't even have time to react. "Hurry," the cultivator in white said as the rest of the cultivators used defensive treasures, and dashed around the cave planting flags. One of the cultivators was so close to me, that if he just turned his head he'll spot me, but his fear from the frog so encroached in his mind he didn't have time to take a look at his surroundings. Once all the flags were placed, and 3 more demons and cultivators were dead, the men in white struck the last flag on the ground, creating an array of swords that began pressing against the toad's skin. Even then, the toad didn't seem too bothered. "This will hold the toad in place, increase the strength of the flags. Once the toad is immobile we'll retrieve the rose," the cultivator said. Suddenly, a few of the pustules on the frog burst open from the pressure. Blue liquid poured from the frog's skin and dripped to the ground melting it, and from the blue liquid, a paler blue gas began emitting from it, slowly creeping on the ground and air. "Use the anti-poison pills," the first cultivator said, and they all chugged in a few pills. I didn't have any anti-poison pills, but this blue poison didn't seem that dangerous. As soon as it made contact with me, it felt as if I was being energized with a sweet-scented incense stick. Damn, what a powerful poison. Even with the anti-poison pills, I'm still having a hard time circulating my chi, one of the cultivators said. "Just hold, we'll crush this toad in no time." Thankfully it's an arrogant creature and rarely thinks anyone can survive its poison. Its own arrogance will be its demise, the decorated cultivator said. And he was right. The toad didn't yet seem to be bothered with the cultivators, until another pustule burst, and an even stronger poison emitted from it. The poison this time was purple in color and was far faster than the blue one. It shot out like arrows into the nostrils of a cultivator that was too focused on feeding the array with his chi than to protect himself. The poison immediately seeped into his nostrils. The cultivator's eyes turned red, and he roared. His muscles grew disproportionately as if he had taken an animal-sized shot worth of steroids. The man screeched and roared, then pointed his sword at the closest cultivator. But the cultivator in white immediately ate a pill and shot at the berserker, decapitating him in a second, then asked another cultivator to take his place. The frog finally began to think that these cultivators are a threat, as it croaked loud and began assessing his situation. "Add more power," the cultivator in white said, and the rest of the cultivators added more chi into their array, forcing the frog to lay flat on its stomach. "We'll take it out in no time. Keep it under," the cultivator said. "Seems like they've exhausted a lot of their power," I judged. It would be a shame if I were to intervene right now, a real shame. My grin was too much for me to hide as I slowly approached the closest cultivator. The cultivator never realized that I was so close to him. With a single thrust and twist of my blade he fell to the ground before he even realized what hit him. And with his death, the array the rest of the cultivators were making fell apart, and the massive blight-bearing toad was upon them. The cultivator wearing white tried his best to infuse more chi into his formation, but to no avail. He failed to sustain an array that needed a dozen people working together to hold. And thankfully, he was too distracted by the massive toad that started taking down heads with its tongue than to look for the cause of his array's malfunction. On any other day, I would have been spotted immediately, but thanks to my Psi Pearl for an eye, the cultivators couldn't use their divine sense in fear of being attacked by the toad's anti-divine sense as they believed it to be. In the imploding chaos, I managed to continue my rotation behind the toad and reach to where no one can see me. The group of cultivators were now facing different and several waves of poisons from the toad, and they were not sparing a single treasure to use in attempt to save their lives. But for all it's worth, they're doing a fine job distracting the toad while trying to save their lives. Still, this distraction is not enough, as if I were to steal the rose, both the toad and the group of cultivators will find only me as a target. I don't want that right now. I continued watching and waiting for an opportunity to claim the rose, and it came rather too readily. The toad, pissed off, decided it was no longer funny to stay arrogant and defend itself from where it stood. It jumped at the nearest cultivator and managed to crush him to a pulp as it used its tongue to rip through the chest of another cultivator. The white-wearing cultivator decided that he was not going to die here today and pulled out a stamp from his pocket, though I have no idea how a stamp that can only be used to sign documents would fare in this situation. The moment the stamp was above the toad, it grew to massive size and fell down on the toad, suppressing it. In that moment, the toad was unable to move, and the cultivators had more than enough time to grab the rose, but I was far ahead in the game as I grabbed the black nether rose the moment the toad was gazing at the stamp that was falling on it, and with the rose taken, I scurried away to the depth of the cave, where the heart flame should be. I could hear curses as the cultivators couldn't find the rose, then the sound of bones breaking. It seems that the toad managed to release itself from the seal and was now upon the cultivators. Since it didn't see me steal the rose, it would definitely think that one of the cultivators that were attacking it were the ones who stole it, and it will not hold back its wrath anymore. I headed deeper into the caves and found an exit from where the blight-bearing toad cave was. It was an open area that looked upon a massive amalgamation of rocks and holes. Caves within caves, but thankfully they were all memorized in the map I had. I managed to find the first pathways leading to the heart flame. The whole cave design looked more like a maze than a naturally made cave system, with a majority of the entrances of smaller caves dispersed everywhere, and all of them leading to dead ends. The heat from the heart flame was strong enough that one could feel it reverberating through all of this system, and since the caves looked like hollowed honeycombs, anyone trying to use their divine sense will find it impossible to inspect the caves. But with the help of the map in hand, I'll be able to find my way to the heart flame cave, and it wasn't taking long before the first sign of success appeared, though most will not call it a success if they were seeing what I was seeing. In front of me was a massive bird-like creature that perched atop one of the cave entrances. It had a green feathery coat and a thin sharp beak. It looked half asleep, but I wasn't going to blindly trust that. I needed to make sure that the bird was actually asleep and not faking it, lest it would get a disgustingly poisonous free meal. After approaching for a while, I noticed the venom-spitting skylark budging, and the moment I took another step, it pointed its beak at me and spat out bullet-sized spittle that I blocked with my robes. Thankfully, the robe didn't melt through, but the poison was potent enough and strong enough that it would usually drop any cultivator immediately. "Little bird, your poison is useless against me. Do you really wish to fight?" I spoke. It would have been crazy to actually speak to animals back in my world, but here, most animals and creatures that reach high cultivation levels are usually sentient and can understand speech. The bird flapped its wings in arrogant defiance and I spat back near the bird, only my spittle was far more toxic than the bird's. It was a compound poison, a mix of the morning burial pita and the fungal greed's torment. The spit hit a nearby rock and immediately dissolved it. The bird stopped its flapping and hesitantly took a step back. "At least you know, if I really wanted to hit you with that, I could have. Now move out of the way," I said as I gestured at the bird with a shooing motion. The bird understood that it wouldn't be wise to cross someone with even stronger poison than he had, so it decided to step aside and let me get in. Once I was inside, I almost wished I didn't. The heat emanating from this cave was so high I felt my bones were about to melt. I hastily retreated to the entrance. Looking back, I could honestly feel the venom-spitting skylark grinning and mocking me. I grumbled under my breath. The Poison God's book mentioned that it's easy to refine this heart flame, but I'm barely at the entrance and I felt as if my whole body was going to turn to cinders. Heck, I couldn't even see this damned flame. Though I can't refine the flame right now, I believe that I can store it in the Poison God's book. I still don't have the required strength to use it, I think. I should at least be a nascent soul cultivator to refine the flame. But how can I take the flame if I can't even approach it? Well, it's simple. I'll send someone who can. I pulled out X from the Poison God's book and gave him the book. "Use this to store the green heart flame," I said, and the puppet nodded, book in hand, and he moved inside the cave. Though X can't use his full prowess as he was suppressed by this small world's laws, he still has a body made from some of the toughest materials that the Laughing Slaughterer had. He will not melt down to nothingness once exposed to the heart flame, probably. I hope. Soon after I sent X, I heard a loud noise behind me. It seems that the group that was following after me had an encounter with the venom-spitting skylark. Not my problem. Though I caused it, I won't take responsibility for their greed. They should have gone for the rose instead of trying to suppress the toad until it died. And with the toad liberated, I'm more than certain that they suffered too many casualties than they would have expected, not to mention they would be ill-fit to fight against the skylark right after an arduous fight against a sixth-tiered beast. Time went by rather slowly, with the cultivators behind me in a life-and-death battle against the skylark, and me waiting patiently for X to come out of the cave. I've no will nor strength to go and get the flame myself, it's just too damn hot even for an alchemist. My current body would turn to sizzling charcoal once I'm in too close to the hard flame, but X's metallic body might have more power to reap what I couldn't get. After about half an hour, X came back, and surprisingly, bar the red-hot discoloration of his body, he didn't melt into a puddle of liquid metal as I had feared. The puppet gave me the Poison God's book, and I used my divine sense to inspect it, finding a gigantic pool of hot liquid green heart flame within it, coupled with a few flowers and spiritual herbs that only grow in extremely hot temperatures. Good finds. I placed the book against my chest and it disappeared within my sea of consciousness. Now with my task complete, I need to make myself scarce. I have not been identified, and would rather not have any more people as enemies, especially since I'm in such an enclosed space. I continued navigating within the cave-made maze and barely managed to find a path that didn't have a dead end. The fighting sounds had long since calmed down, either the skylark had taken them all out or they escaped it. Either way, it would be best if I leave. I'm not too keen on staying in places that I have no knowledge of the layout of. The path I followed was deserted and void of all life but some few plants and poisonous herbs, nothing spiritual, but most would make powerful concoctions or additions to already strong poisons that I can make using the harvest of poison spiritual herbs I gathered when I entered the Poison Valley. The Poison Valley exit soon came to present itself as I walked out of the Doom and Death Valley filled with evil chi and found my way back to a massive archipelago in the middle of the pond that would be comparable to a small sea. The archipelago had a lot of smaller islands, and a good deal of cultivators moving from island to island. I immediately pocketed my sword and moved behind a random group of cultivators and followed after them. One of the cultivators turned and noticed me. "Fellow cultivator, why are you following us?" he asked. "I apologize, I intended to take this place to reach the Lord's Tower. It's but a coincidence that we're on the same track," I replied. "Right, you may follow, but please don't do anything rash," the cultivator advised, and I cupped my hand at him. There was absolutely no need to antagonize anyone for being careful. The group in front of me was composed of 3 cultivators all wearing the same type of clothes. They belonged to the same sect. They didn't seem to be hostile and moved forward while having their divine sense probing around and, unintentionally, go my way. I didn't mind it, especially as I followed closely behind them. One of them definitely was annoyed at how close I was, and was about to talk when his friend shook his head. They seem like good kids, they didn't want to cause trouble or be the ones instigating it. Interesting. After a period of moving about, one of the 3 cultivators I was following halted and said, "There is a maritime creature here, let's wait for it to pass." And his words proved true, as a massive shadow went between the 2 islands and swam deeper into the archipelago. We continued hopping from island to island into a congregation of other cultivators. Brother Shen Bao, the voice of Lang Xiao echoed in the distance. I turned to see him with Wu Di and Yuzahan, all 3 of them looking my way. "Thank you, fellow cultivators, for your company." I smiled at the now stunned group and walked away. I heard one of them whispering, "Thank God we didn't offend him. Hell, if I knew he was that Shen Bao, I would have tried to be more courteous. It seems that my reputation precedes me. Well, that's good. That'll make people think twice before trying to compare dick sizes with me." "You guys look like you just crawled out of hell," I said as I took a better glance at the 3. "It was worth it. We found a tripod spirit vine, and we had a pretty tough battle," Lang Xiao said. "If it wasn't for Wu Di, you'd be dead. The least you can do is give him credit," Yuzahan said. "Hey, at least let me gloat a bit," Xiang Lang said. His expressions looked hurt. I smiled at the group. "Congratulations, the tripod spirit vine will help you out greatly in your cultivation." "Thank you, Brother Shen Bao," Wu Di replied. Though his white robes and his fan were now slightly dirty, he still exuded a young master's look. "So, what's going on here?" I asked. "We're waiting for the Lord's tomb to open." Wu Di said. So this is what all this demon lands and Lord Tomb thing is about. Do you know what the test is about? I asked. Well, it's a strange test, it always something different. My master told me that when he visited this place, he had to fight through hordes of enemies night and day. And his own master only needed to walk through a bridge, while each had a different experience, so I cannot say what our test might be. Wu Di said. Right, then we'll just have to wait and see, I said and sat down. As many others had done, they had all sat down meditating and replenishing their forces and wait for the tower to open. After what seemed to be hours of waiting, more cultivators had joined us, a few started battling even, and some demons huddled up together. A few of the cultivators from the Toad's Cave were also here, but they seemed heavily wounded, some even had a missing limb. I didn't need to gloat, or provoke them, they sought wealth without sufficient power, and I was the one who benefited, and since they don't know that it's me who took the flower, I won't tell them I did. More time passed as more people came into the tower, and right now, the number easily surpassed the couple thousand. It's scary to see so many people gathered up here and so close. The whole atmosphere felt like dynamite about to be lit and would turn to chaos at the drop of a hat. As many of these kids here are the geniuses of their own sects, the leading figures, and the hopes for the future, confrontation and battle are hard to suppress in the heart of the young and restless. They are barely holding on to their composure and stopping the urge to show off their prowess in front of such a great and massive crowd. But if they were the first to start, they'll be labeled as the troublemaker, and would only be the target to other cultivators who will then try to put them in place for making trouble and at the same time making a name for themselves. Everyone waited for the other to start, but no one dared start. Thankfully the whole atmosphere was diffused immediately when the tower shuttered and a massive blue portal opened up at the base. Enter the Lord's tomb and prove your value to the Lord. The words abruptly ended and people began funneling inside the tower. It didn't take much time before I, Wu Di, Lang Xiao, and Yuzahan entered the tower, and in front of us was a celestial road made of clouds. It hovered in space over the stars and led to the depth of the unknown. Celestial globes, stars, suns, planets, and meteors flew above and below us as we moved forward in this unending and massive celestial path. Walk until you can walk no more, then face your fear, prove you can break what might break you, and you shall be awarded handsomely. The voice said, and in front of us hundreds of candles lit up. The celestial road was thankfully wide, so wide that all the cultivators could stand shoulder to shoulder and there would still be space. As for the candles, they served as a measure to the distance one had crossed. Everyone began to walk, and the moment I reached the first candle I found myself in a dark alley, back on Earth, the same alley I died in. I was wearing my casual clothes, a cheap tux picked from the shelves of a brandless store, barely fitting my body, as it slightly slumped over my shoulders and was a bit shorter than my arm's length. This was my suit, and I knew it, every nook and cranny of it, every cut, bleached spot, and sweat stains on it. In my hand was my suitcase, and it was filled with documents from work. I didn't lose focus, nor did I think that all my days cultivating was nothing but a dream. Nor a second-rated protagonist who lost their sense of awareness. I refused to think that 80 years of struggle was nothing but a dream. All my suffering, all of the battles I had, and this path I took was nothing but a dream, and I'm back to reality. I'm not such a bore. Looking forward, there were a couple of thugs gesturing to each other. I've been marked. And they'll soon come at me. One of them had, what the fuck? A crowbar. I was killed with a damn crowbar. The men with the crowbar had gone behind me, and it seems that the day I died I was actually too distressed with my day at work the day I died that I didn't notice this exact scene happening, but my subconscious had saved this for me to see once again, in this road. The men with the crowbar lifted it and it came against my head, only this time, I wasn't the same Larry Hudson. I'm Shen Bao, a cultivator in another world that lived several decades and fought with monsters so frightening that these two wouldn't be worth a fart in my eyes. I held my hand against the crowbar and a wave of agony shot through my hand. It seems that I don't have my strength from the cultivation world, as my hand was clearly broken now. But the impact of the blow seemed more shocking not to me but the men who looked at my barely expressive face as I stared at my broken and unnaturally bent hand in amazement. Using my other hand, I immediately yanked the crowbar from the man's hand and swung it fast, hard, and decisively at his neck, ripping his entire throat out of its place. The man with his throat ripped tried to gasp for breath, and staunch the blood flow with his other hand, but his life was already claimed the moment he tried to take mine. What the fuck, the other man said as he turned to run. With the crowbar in my hand, I lugged it forward and threw it with enough strength that it tore through the man's shoulder and had him drop to the ground. I slowly walked behind the man and ripped the crowbar from his back. He turned crying and shouting, pleading even, but I gazed at him, unceremoniously. This whole shit was nothing but an illusion, and even if it was real, they had it coming. Then I used his head as if it was a golf ball, and the crowbar was a heavy golf club. End result, his head caved in and was twisted out of its place. Almost immediately, I felt my vision swam, and I was back on the celestial road. Looking around me, I seemed to be the first one to have woken from my test. I then continued moving, and once I was at the second candle, I received another vision. The first time I was facing an assassin, a threat from my early days back at Lucid Springs. There a person hired a man to kill me as I amassed a lot of wealth and he wanted to take what was mine. Then another candle, another fear, and I continued moving, and with every candle, I looked back and see people dropping on their knees, in fright, scared out of their wits. And some outright vomiting. Why the heck are they like that? This whole shit had already happened, and it was an experience that they already went through. Why do they think that reliving it would break them? They should focus more on the fact that they already survived and came on top. Fools. I continued walking, moving from candle to candle, leaving everyone in the dust. I walked so far and faced so much again and again, but nothing moved me until I stopped in front of a candle that was lit and exuded a green light. I immediately knew which fear I'll be facing here, and I was ready for it. Just as I stood in front of the candle, my vision turned. Though I was still in space, I was in deep space, where not even the stars shone, not even their light reached this dark void and empty place. But in front of me, there it stood, a creature that was as old as time, as big as the skies, and as unfathomable as this very endless space. I looked the primordial dragon snake in the eyes and it did the same to me. I had no way, no will, no power and no possible way or method to face this thing. I was neither strong enough to fight it, fast enough to escape it, but at least, I was brave enough to face it. Not that I would manage such a feat if this was reality, something many of the people doing this very test failed to see. This was fake, all of it. It was nothing more than a test to face one's fears, and then in facing them, their hearts would grow stronger. But here, though this thing frightened me, it was not a heart demon. It was not something like the many people here faced. This was not some insurmountable obstacle in my life that I'll need to work hard to overtake. This in front of me was an illusion, as the real thing. If it had stood this close to me, I would have died thousands of times over. What's in front of me didn't even portray a fraction of a billionth of a fraction of the real terror that was swimming the deep space and was coming towards me. The primordial dragon snake was an entity that was born with the birth of this world, or so the poison god had said. I would never even dream of surviving if I were to face this creature with my current strength, and thus, I feared not, for if this illusion was my death, then I would die. But if this illusion was nothing but an illusion, then what is it to fear? The creature in front of me opened its mouth, and I gazed upon it unmoved. It then dove on me and I remained unfazed, unperturbed. It engulfed me whole, as darkness, blacker than the depth of space submerged me, yet I didn't shudder, scream, fear or feel distress. I remained unmoving like a mountain. I had seen the real, so how could the unreal ever have power over my heart? Suddenly, I woke back up on the celestial road, and in front of me, there were no more candles. You faced your fears, you faced your death, and you still stand unperturbed. I know not of a man that has no fear, for those who have no fear are only the crazed, or gods. The probability of being the first is high, yet it doesn't exclude the latter. You have a long path ahead of you, cultivator. In front of me a door opened up. It was made of gold and bronze. It had the depiction of fair ladies, brave men, dragons, and phoenixes above it. The door opened up into a massive realm, where the ground was made of mix of gold and dark substance. This place was broad and wide enough that I couldn't fully see its end, and what made this place's sky was not the blue skies of the world, but rather the endless space. Disciple of mine, where? For you're in the lower celestial realm. This place here is good for cultivators who wish to cultivate their chi into Saint Chi. Though you do not have the capability to do so, you should know that facing a creature that has been born here will be the end of you. Get any treasures you can get, and escape from this place if you can. The heck is going on? The moment I thought this, my body shuddered as I felt a weight far surpassing whatever I had pushing against me. My sky pearl almost threatened to break as it overworked itself in trying to fend off the assault. It turned extremely hot, hot enough that I felt that it would burn through my skull from the sudden pain. I forcefully shut down its defensive ability and finally was able to breathe. What the fuck, was this a divine sense? I shuddered at the thought, someone's divine sense. This wasn't even an attack, but it was powerful enough that I felt like an ant caught between the thumb and index of a giant. Not only was my sky pearl unable to fend off this divine sense, it was as if this divine sense was powerful enough that all the inscriptions I had on the pearl were not nearly fractionally enough to contend nor even dare oppose it with the torturous illusions I had on it. Whoever used their divine sense on me disregarded my whole existence immediately, as if I was nothing but a fly on a piece of dung, unworthy of thought. Vexing, but if he thought such of me, then it would be best, as I don't want any unwanted attention. Feel free to have whatever you may obtain from here. But do not be too greedy. The voice that accompanied me in this trail said. I looked around and noticed that the whole place I was on was encompassed in a vast dome. It was barely shimmering against the golden ground of this lower celestial realm. I used my sword to travel through this celestial realm. As I moved, I saw many tumbled down palaces. Buildings that should have been built using some extremely expensive materials have all been destroyed due to time. Space above the shimmering dome looked heavily distorted, the space was ripped, and from within these rips in space came a purple wind that felt like it would tear me to atoms if I were to set foot outside this shimmering dome. I didn't think about going out of the dome and decided that it would be best to try and inspect these ruins. Perhaps I could find something useful. And so I started going from palace to palace, hoping to find anything, and I did. As a matter of fact, I found silverware, glassware and many other stuff. Most looked older than time itself, but they were made from material that was no simple. These small utensils, for example, they were made with celestial silver. It's far more amazing and more expensive than normal silver, and it can channel chi with great efficiency. This very spoon in my hand could be exchanged for a city in term of value. And there were many of them. I began sweeping the palace from the wares and continued on, from palace to palace. I even found some old rusty swords, but most of them were just used for decoration. There were no legendary swords or something amazing. I continued looking through the palaces, and then I felt another surge of that same divine sense from before. Only this time it didn't focus on me and only went past me. I understood that many other disciples had entered this place, and if I were to stay here longer I'll probably end up meeting them. Since I was here first, they'll probably assume I have found something interesting, and will be in a standoff that I don't want to be in. I decided to leave a few spoons and random materials, but anything else, I grabbed. I have no idea why this Lord's tomb gave us access to this lower celestial realm, but I'm damn thankful. It seems that this is the first time the Lord's tomb allowed anyone to access this area. And since it randomly takes the disciples to random places, I believe this is the first time in a few thousand years that any living being had set foot in this place. I continued moving through the lands until I felt that something was wrong. I have already been here a while ago. Looking back, I saw a couple cultivators coming my way, but they didn't even look at me, nor call me out. They just walked into a nearby palace. Some every directly looked my way, but there was no recognition of my existence. Suddenly, one of them took a sudden turn and he completely disappeared, while the rest didn't even register their friend disappearing. They too followed after him and disappeared from my sight. I was at a loss. What the heck was happening? Soon more cultivators and demons came, but they all took random twists and turns. I even saw some of them walk right into walls, and out of them. Something is wrong with this place. It's like there is a flaw in the law of space in this exact place. And immediately after I thought about this, I had an epiphany regarding this place. This whole goddamned place was like a maze. Its compounded space, pieces of this celestial realm were actually folded atop each other. I sat down and began thinking about this whole ordeal. I thankfully still remember the areas I went through, and as it seems, the only way for someone to come in contact with me is if they take the same steps I did, or be extremely lucky and find a way into the space I'm currently in. Also, it seems that I accidentally happened to be in a higher special chamber. Yes, I'll call them that, spatial chamber. And since I'm in a higher spatial chamber I'm able to see them but they're not able to see me. Then, could this mean that whoever used their divine sense earlier is already on an even higher spatial chamber than I? Well, laws of space aren't easy to understand, but so far, I have a little bit of comprehension of my current situation, though I highly feel that I'm trapped in this place. I tried using my divine sense, but it immediately backfired. My divine sense spread at first like a globe around me, then it began spreading in long lines that turned and twisted everywhere and all over the place. It was like the moment I took a step there were hundreds of different paths and chambers that I would be taken to. It's very strange, but it feels like every step is an entrance to another branching path, only this path had hundreds of different exits, and every step I took would lead me to a different place. This maze is rather amazing, and I think I'll probably die here if I don't find a way out. I can't take any careless steps. As I discovered the true danger of this place, it would be unwise to take careless paths, so now, which path to take, and which way to go? I took several moments to think of what I needed to do. If I were to take a random step, I might enter another spatial chamber, lower, or higher, or maybe in between. The special chambers seem random and not organized. I used my divine sense to try and spot them, but it was useless. I can't see the chambers using divine sense. So I used the next best thing, my sky pearl eye. I have inscribed it with thermal vision and night vision, but nothing that could allow me to see through space laws, simply because I didn't have the ability to understand space law. I switched the vision of my sky pearl, hoping that something might change, but using thermal vision was the same as using regular sight. Nothing different was apparent. I sighed as I felt frustration at being unable to see where I'll be moving next. So, I sat down and pulled out an item I had in my inventory. I didn't use it since I had obtained it, but it seems that it's time I actually start focusing on real cultivation instead of looking for shortcuts. I pulled out the small law stone I received from the Laughing Slaughterer's pagoda, and placed it in front of me. I had a fear that if I were to use this law stone, that the primordial dragon snake would notice me like the last time and come at me. But this time I was ready for it. I had already seen it in the trial of fear, and now I can probably withstand its humongous size and frightening appearance. I focused on the law stone and found myself once again in space. Though space was right above me when I used the law stone, I was space. I had no substance. I was a part of the world, and I could feel the globes and celestial orbs floating all in their own orbits, moving in the endless space as if they were pilgriming to the deep unknown. To try and comprehend space laws from mere exposure is impossible. I needed to be able to comprehend how space worked. I bet Albert Einstein would give his right arm for this very experience. I continued gliding through space, and saw many, many strange things, and in one part of my mind, I made sure not to approach a certain location with certain star formations. It's where the primordial dragon snake lived. So I fully ignored that side of space and focused on where I was. Space was large enough that you can find many strange things all over it, like this in front of me. Two stars had collided, and in their collision, a massive shockwave echoed, enough that it obliterated even bigger stars that were nearby. Their explosion created an aurora effect that was colorful as special dust took different rainbow colors. And within the explosion there was an implosion, as the ever-expanding colorful dust began gathering, swept and sucked back into its origin. The center of the collision of the two stars became an unstable mass of power. The might of the explosion tore space, and in this tear, space contorted and not even light was able to escape. It was like creating a deep hole in the depth of the ocean, and now the whole ocean was funneling into that hole, trying to correct that mistake and close it. A black hole. Unlike my experience and what I learned from Earth, this black hole wasn't just a deep and heavy dent in space that consumed everything, but actually it was like a small orb that sucked everything from every side. Unlike a tub where water would funnel from one side, this orb sucked space itself from every side. It was hard to explain, and one needed to be there to experience it. And in that instant I had a small understanding that space wasn't in fact like a sheet of paper as I had presumed, but billions of sheets of paper that were stacked above each other, within each other, diagonally, horizontally and in between. It was like so many pieces of paper were so tightly held against each other that they created a ball with no start and no end in between, and creating a single dent in one of these sheets of paper would undoubtedly affect the rest. And how would this help me understand the special chambers? It wouldn't, but it would at least show me how it worked. It seems that whoever created this maze was using this very concept of space paper. Damn, I have so many random names for the strangest things, and with these space papers, he is actually able to separate them and fold them against each other, creating a maze without walls but with space itself as the medium. I immediately woke from my stupor. Pain assaulted my head as my nose was clearly bleeding. That's what you get for trying to comprehend something so far from your scope of understanding, I heard, and this voice had so much might and power in it that I felt no more than a toddler in the presence of a terrifying lion. "Who's there?" I asked, but received no answer. I wiped my nose and called my mind. I could be imagining things, but this feeling of fear was real. My hands were still shaking, and if this person wanted me dead, I will be dead, because it is his right, and I cannot deny him that. I have no right to do so. Fuck, This is exactly the same as back in that cave. Someone with enough power to topple the world is nearby and could snuff my soul with a sneeze. I took a deep breath and calmed myself. There was no need for me to worry about things I cannot affect, and since he didn't kill me yet, he doesn't mean me harm, at least for now. When my self-loathing and pity ended, I was finally able to witness a small change that I wasn't able to see before. There were small ripples in front of me. They were barely visible. They resembled the mirage of desert or highway, where heat would make the road look like it was wobbling. And this small effect was everywhere. And it expanded into lines that spread from the ground to the high skies. In between these lines was a clear space. I hesitantly went between two lines, and the moment I went beyond them, I felt pressure changing. It was the same type of pressure you'll feel when you close a room, even your ears pop. I frowned. Did I just enter another spatial room? Somewhere else in the lower celestial realm. There was a man tied with so many chains and restrictions that anyone below the ascendant level would immediately lose their mind if they tried to use their divine sense to comprehend these restrictions. The man was a disheveled young man that had a devilish handsomeness to his body. His whole demeanor was that of a sickly young noble with vicious expressions. His eyes held disdain toward the world, nay, toward heavens themselves. This young man was imprisoned, sealed, and locked away in this forgotten place. His whole demeanor, however, never changed, nor did this imprisonment bother him. He was locked in a room in a massive palace. If Shen Bao was here, he would have to admit that this palace was so far beyond the already astonishing palace of the Purple Cloud sect that there was no way to compare them. But this very palace was nothing but a prison for this young man. He was sitting on a throne fit for a king, but for what king would wish to be shackled? Where the most impressive thing was the sword right above this man's head. It hovered dangerously close to his head and would come down if this young man tried to unshackle himself. There was no way for the young man to leave this place, at least that was what he believed. Until a few days ago, where a strange man had come to visit him. This young man had been imprisoned for so many years he lost count when it went past the first 1,000 years. But this strange man that came to visit, not only managed to arrive at this palace, he had gone past and beyond the traps that were laid out in this place without triggering them, nor did the traps themselves were able to detect him. The imprisoned young man on the throne was vexed, because he had believed that he was strong. In his days, he believed that no one was his peer. He was a dragon among dragons. A mighty character of a prominent sect, that went far beyond the scope of what mortals could ever describe, yet a single mistake caused him this punishment and he vowed vengeance once he leaves, that is if he leaves. And what vexed this man the most, what annoyed him the most was not the fact that the men wearing black clothes didn't even offer to help him out of his predicament, no matter how many rewards the young men had offered. No, the man in black didn't even deem this young prince worthy of help from his hands, and his exact words were, "Only the dragon spirit can save you, it is your fate, so it is his." "Wait for the dragon spirit," the man said, and then he left. Now, dragon spirit. What the hell is a dragon spirit? The young man had seen many dragons, but this is the first time he heard this dragon spirit. And then out of nowhere, this man comes, a sick man, full of a wretched poison, the bone and body grinding poison. Not that it was that difficult to take care of this vile poison, but because this very poison brought some unwanted memories for this young man. There was a man that was plagued with this very poison, and unlike the many people who were touched by this poison, there were only two outcomes: either they die, or they use ungodly amounts of resources to remove this poison. All but one man, a man that used this very poison to empower himself, to make a name for himself, to become one of the mightiest pillars of the supreme realms, the poison god. A man that was lost to the world one day where he went to face the primordial dragon snake. Though this man's death hasn't been confirmed, at least when this young prince was out of prison, he doesn't know what could have happened in these thousands of years of prison. Now, there was another person with that same poison body, but the difference between the two is like a firefly to the sun. One was a god among gods and costed this young man a literal arm and a leg in their first encounter, and this thing in front of it, it was so weak, so feeble, and so annoying that his very existence encroached upon this young prince's mind like that of a disgusting insect within one's home. Yet this young man cannot do much but see, as he witnessed his prison being invaded by forces of smaller cultivators. He knew well enough that none of them would have been able to survive this place if the Lord of Lords hadn't placed a time ejection upon this place that would eject anyone that cannot consciously travel this spatial maze. Luck has nothing to do with this, all of these people will be ejected. Yet this man, plagued with the bone and body grinding poison, was just annoying, an eyesore to this young man because he dared to try and comprehend the laws of space with his merger cultivation. He was what? A core cultivator, yes, that's the term. The young man was old enough that he couldn't remember when he ever was a core realm cultivator. His horizon had been broadened when he arrived at the supreme celestial realm. Unlike this small portion, this dirt piece of a wretched excommunicated piece of lower celestial realm, the supreme celestial realm was beyond this dimension, something these mere mortals can never hope to reach, achieve, nor set foot in. In that realm, even the newborns are born at the ascendant stage, so how could these mortals fare against them? How dare this plagued brat even dream of trying to comprehend the spatial maze of the Master Rain? And while the young man watched, disdainfully, at the plagued brat, he saw him pull a lost stone. It was a good quality lost stone, quite a find, though it was useless to the young master. It was a good thing for that man. How did he find such a thing coming from such a backwater land? Judging from the level of the rest of the cultivators, the air about them, and even the impurities within their bodies, they must belong to a plant with so little chi that the existence of Saint Chi would be an impossibility. How come he has something so good? The brat pulled the lost stone and tried to comprehend it, and in a matter of minutes, which is normal for someone with a monkey's brain, as they would never be able to understand a thing from the lost stone in such a short period, the brat's nose started bleeding. That's what you get for trying to comprehend something so far from your scope of understanding, the young man said, though he tried to lessen the impact of his divine sense lest he flat out causes the blade to pierce through his head. The whole mechanism was rigged that if he were to try anything, it would execute him. Though he didn't care for the life of the brat, he cared for his own life far too much to risk death at the cost of killing some random ant. The brat shuddered, and tried to find who talked to him. This very action caused this young master glee. His mere words were now a terror to the brat, but the young man's expression soon soured. Somehow, the brat managed to calm himself and disregard the message. Not even that, he actually showed signs of understanding. No, impossible. Such a brat is definitely unable to comprehend Master Rain's ingenious achievements in the laws of space. Unlike the men wearing black, whose very existence was so far away from the young master himself, this brat showed ability to comprehend the compounded space maze that Master Rain was praised for. It's impossible, it must be luck. Yes, luck, nothing more, nothing less. The young man calmed himself with that thought only to almost cough out blood, as the brat continued navigating through the maze with purposeful steps, walking from chamber to spatial chamber. 1 or 2 would have been luck, but hundreds of chambers consecutively. This man knew what he was doing. Suddenly, the brat was in front of a wall, a massive wall in front of him. Yes, this will definitely be the proof this young master needed to confirm his suspicion. In front of the plagued brat was a wall. It didn't look anything else. It was a physical barrier, and within this barrier was the exit of this maze, but anyone would not be able to physically walk through a wall, unless he had comprehended the laws of space, and then they'll be able to do something about it. The brat touched the wall, and the young master took a breath of relief. The moment the brat's mind thought that this wall was actually physical, it will turn physical and would forever close him into that maze. But what happened next caused the young man to literally cough out blood. The brat ran headfirst into the wall. Anyone would hesitate a fraction of a second, and shouting, "Hogwarts Express, here I come." The hell does that even mean? A fraction of a second of hesitation would have rewarded me with a very bad bruise on my forehead. But I made calculations after calculations, and the only way out from this place is through this damn wall. Unlike before, all of the spatial chambers were created in empty areas, so there were no physical barriers to stop me from going from one room to the other, but this wall was an exception. It was here all right, but at the same time it was not. When I used my divine sense, I could feel this was a physical wall, but the ripples around it clearly state that this is the exit of this maze. "Hogwarts Express, here I come." I shouted and ran right through the wall and managed to exit out into an open area without feeling any sort of resistance. Yes. I made it. I fist-bumped the sky like a teenager, then calmed myself after looking around. I'm not that young, but it seems that the impact of rejuvenation from growing in cultivation is slightly impacting my attitude. I should keep myself in check lest I turn into some arrogant snobbish young noble. Looking around, I had a vague feeling that I was being watched, and that sucked. It must be the one who used the divine sense earlier, and this feeling of being watching is irking me because I feel that whatever I do, I'll be exposed. However, since the owner of the divine sense didn't act maliciously towards me, I'm feeling that so far I'm not at any risk, but it's always good to be cautious. Also, I need to tone down my sky pearl. So far, it hurts like a motherfucker when a divine sense that powerful goes through me, but I can't disable it outright. I might end up against other cultivators and I'll need it to help me to fend off the divine senses. Looking around, The area around me didn't seem much different from where I was. Actually, if a normal person was here, he wouldn't see the difference between the area behind this old wall or after it. But it's a night and day's difference. Now, I'm sure I'm in a place that hasn't been touched by any other cultivator for at least a long time. I began looking around, hoping to find anything of value. The whole landscape was still part of the celestial realm. Thought it was a strange ground. Looking at the dirt, it was like dirt, but golden dirt. As for the sky, it was still a dark space, and I'm still unable to comprehend how the heck this place is even receiving light. Sadly, there were no planets in sight. All of this area was just dirt. Nothing of value. I walked forward without any specific destination because there were no points of reference where I was. There were a few hills in the distance, but besides the hills and the area where I came from, there was nothing else here. I pulled out my sword and hopped on it, and almost immediately I felt the same annoying divine sense goes against me, and heavily inspect the sword. Damn it, what's with this person and his nosy-ass divine sense? But I better keep my discontent to myself. If he is strong enough to threaten my life with his mere glancing divine sense, I better not piss him off. I flew until I reached the hills and saw what was behind them, and here I was totally, completely, and fully astonished. Just behind the hills was a massive basin that had an entire city within it, yet it was all void of life. The whole city was locked tight with inscriptions, traps, and deadly formations. They shimmered so much that I immediately realized the moment I were to use my divine sense I would be killed. The formations here were so many, and so compounded that it would be impossible for anyone to walk through this place without full comprehension of these inscriptions. The problem was, if these were normal inscriptions, I could risk going there and see if I could find something of interest in them, but the whole goddamn place was filled with inscriptions that were made with Saint Chi. This was impossible. No way. This was death, a guillotine sharpened to the extent that it would cut through the air itself. I turned away. There was no way for me to risk going there, no matter the reward, no matter what I could find in that city. It's only death that would await. Fuck me. I stood still. In front of me was a creature that I couldn't even sense. It had approached me without me taking notice. It was like a gorilla, with 3 eyes, one of them closed, and on its forehead, he had 2 horns and had golden fur. Its arms looked so thick and rippling with strength and muscles that I knew that I would be dead 100 times over if this creature even grazed me. And it looked at me with a vicious grin. It was laughing, prepared to introduce me to a world of hurt if I were to try anything funny. And if that was the only problem, it would have been fine, but this very ape was not the only one. There were 5 more just behind it, all of them giggling and laughing as they looked at me. Hesitate and die. Right in front of the apes, I split into 2 perfect clones. One of them took to the right and the other to the left. It wasn't much, and against numbers like theirs, it was definitely lacking, but I gotta admit, thanks to the cultivator in crimson robes from the Poison God's cave, and his annoying pouch, the golden scripture, the movement technique inside it, I hastily took a note of it, tried it a few times, and now it's the worst time ever to test it because if I were to fail I'll die. Immediately when the apes were distracted by me splitting into 2, half of them chased after my clone and the other half went after me. Fuck. This is bad, they're way too damn fast. The apes wound lunge and cover hundreds of meters with a single leap. I was hard-pressed to escape them on the hills, and my only option was to go down into the den infested with deadly formations. Fuck.